Welcome to 101 Raft Tips You Should Know Season 2. This is all tips, 1 through 101. Hi friends, and welcome back to Raft. Seeing as I have officially finished Season 2 of 101 Raft Tips, I wanted to put them all into one easy-to-access place for future Forward Scouts to access. These tips are more or less identical to their original shorts, which is where the series came from. So if the video seems a little bit fast-paced, please know that's why. Each topic was meant to be just about a minute long. All tips in order are listed in the description in case you're looking for a specific topic. But I hope you enjoy what could be considered the ultimate guide to our favorite ocean floating simulator. Flotsam is another term for the debris or the trash that spawns around you on the surface of the water. There are always 4 types of flotsam to be collected, and these make up the vast majority of your necessary baseline resources for crafting and building throughout the game. Flotsam spawns in chunks in the direction of your raft's travel. Sometimes a chunk will be more dense than another chunk. Using either your hook, your hands, or some collection nets, you'll be able to gather plastic, planks, leaves, and barrels or crates. Plastic, planks, and leaves are all baseline resources that only grant 1 unit per item, except for the leaves that spawn in clumps of 3. Those do give 3 leaves per retrieval. Barrels and crates are a little more worth your time because that's a good way to get early game access to food in the form of potatoes and beets, and they are the only non-island related source of scrap. Picking up barrels or crates tends to net more than one of a given resource, making them more resource dense for your hook durability. Barrels or crates are also the only way to get your first 2 necessary blueprints for the receiver and the antenna to start the story. These blueprints are obtained by retrieving a barrel once 15 minutes has passed in a given save file, so stay alert and try and gather everything that passes by you. There are 3 levels of hooks in Raft. Your iconic plastic hook that is unlocked from the start of the game, the mid-tier scrap hook unlocked via the research table, and the endgame titanium hook that requires grabbing a blueprint from a certain story location to craft. As a general rule, the hooks are all gradients of each other, where higher quality hooks tend to throw further, have higher durability, reel in faster, and pick up underwater materials faster. But just because the titanium hook is technically the best at all of those things, doesn't mean it's worth the resources it takes to craft. Durability can be a concern when crafting multiple hooks, but in my opinion, the plastic hook is still the best suited for gathering flotsam floating past you. If you aim up about 45 degrees and perpendicular to your raft, it's not difficult to reach the edge of the trash stream even with the flimsiest of the hooks. Additionally, if you miss a throw, you can right-click or left trigger to instantly retrieve your hook. If you have something on your hook and you want to instantly retrieve it, just jump into the water. The plastic hook has 40 uses, whereas the metal hook has a durability of 100 uses and is significantly faster underwater. And the differences between the titanium hook and the metal hook when gathering underwater resources, nor the full 200 use durability, is not enough to justify its increased cost for me. Use the right hook for the right job and you'll be spending in resources in no time. If you want to unlock any major recipes beyond the ones you start with, you're going to need the research table found under the Other tab in the crafting menu. Using the table itself is decently simple, but it is absolutely necessary to progress. Simply place the table down on your raft and insert a resource into the slot in the table menu, then click Research. All the recipes requiring that resource will now have that research resource highlighted in green. Repeat that with the rest of the listed resources to unlock a given recipe. Once you've researched a resource once, you don't need to do it ever again in that save file. Note that second-tier crafting resources like bolts, hinges, or circuit boards need to be researched so that you can craft them to then research them to use them in even more advanced recipes. Blueprints are also directly tied to the research table in the way that the physical blueprint is useless the moment you pick it up. In order to use the item the blueprint was for, you'll need to unlock it in the research table. The blueprints themselves can either be treated as collectibles, or you can return them from whence they came. Sometimes you'll have already researched all of the necessary components for a blueprint item, but you'll need to have held the physical blueprint in order for it to show up in the listings. And if there isn't something there that you think should be there, just remember to check that you scrolled all the way back to the top of the menu. With Raft officially released on the Xbox Series X and S and the PS5, crossplay between systems including PCs is now possible. At the time of recording, crossplay is still in beta for PC players, but theoretically this will still be the connection mechanism down the road. To create a multiplayer crossplay enabled world, simply go to New World in the main menu, make sure Friends Can Join is enabled, or invite only if you only want certain people to be able to join, then make sure you tick the box labeled Crossplay. Then create the world as you normally would, and either invite your friends directly or wait for them to join after sending them the world code found in the pause menu. If you were attempting to join a crossplay world, go to the Join World tab in the main menu and join off of your friend if the world is open, or type in the world code that the host has sent you. For PC hosts, there isn't a limit on how many players you can have in a world other than your computer's capacity. For console hosts, generally speaking, no more than 6 players can join before things start to get buggy. But Raft did win the Better with Friends Steam Award for a reason, so enjoy the oceans across platforms. As the name of the game implies, the raft is a central part of raft gameplay. You can expand yours using the build hammer unlocked from the start of the game. Foundations can only be used on the level of the water, and these make up the base level of your raft. For everything else, you'll need floors, and those can be supported by walls or pillars. Pillars come in two varieties, horizontal and vertical. Generally speaking, floors can only be placed within 1 square of a supporting structure. Before Chapter 3 came out with horizontal pillars, that meant lots of pillars everywhere. But with horizontal pillars, all you need is a starting point and a beam going across as far as you want it to go. Although horizontal pillar hitboxes can be weird with placing floors and with other placeable objects. If an item you think should fit isn't placing for some reason, try removing the pillars and rebuilding after the item is down. Functionally, there is no difference between build material types for walls or likewise, other than aesthetics and the cost. The more expensive foundations do take longer for Jeremiah to destroy though. If you choose to use the palm walls, be warned that certain wall decorations are only visible on one side as the leaves will hide it on the other side. You can also change the texture of something you've already built by using the bottom option in the build menu, but be warned that sometimes this does make decoration items disappear. With some of the other basic necessary information out of the way in the previous 5 tips, here is my input on early game priorities and how to set yourself up for success. Step number 1. Get yourself a build hammer and start expanding your raft base by at least 2 squares in every direction so that you have space to work with, and throwing your hook to the edge is a bit easier. Just replace any pieces that Jeremiah eats, they aren't all that expensive and he won't attack that frequently. Just don't put important stuff on the edges. Step number 2, the research table. Get it down and start researching right away. Step number 3, food. If you place a crop plot under a research table, you'll not only protect it from the obnoxious seagulls, but it will still get watered by rain, which saves you water. Step number 4, collection nets. These passively gather items for you, so you may as well use them. Just protect them with another layer of foundations for now. And step number 5, island exploration. A lot of raft happens on the islands constantly passing by you. If you're not going to immediately perish from hunger the instant you set foot on an island, then it's time to start exploring and gathering the next set of resources you'll need for the rest of the game. Generally speaking, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and just enjoy the journey that is our favorite ocean floating simulator. Without any additional inputs like sails, paddles, or engines, and without outside interference from things like bumping into islands, your raft will always float in a straight line directly towards the north, which for some reason is where the sun rises in this game. The wind will always blow north, regardless of what stage of the game you're in, how big your raft is, or what direction you are facing. If your raft does bump into something and you can't use the sun as a compass, the streamer under the navigation tab also works and will always point you back in the direction of the wind, which will always be the fastest direction of travel. Without navigation aids, the raft moves at a constant speed of 1.5 meters northwards. That can be increased with other input in the forms of paddles or engines, but going against the wind is significantly slower. Physically changing the direction your raft is facing can only be done by running into something at the right angle, or with the steering wheel unlocked by a blueprint at the end of the second story location. For the early game, it's best to avoid running into islands when possible by using a paddle and getting yourself out of situations you might be stuck in using that same paddle. Use a sail for your general steering needs until the engine and the steering wheel are available. The receiver and the antenna are 2 necessary early game blueprints if you want to start the story, and both blueprints are found by retrieving barrels after 15 minutes has passed in a given save file. You don't need to hold on to the physical blueprint, but you do need to unlock the crafting recipe in the research table, and both recipes require mid-tier researched resources. As for placing the receiver and the 3 required antenna, you'll need to have a platform at least 1 full wall above sea level. Each antenna needs to be placed at least 2 full squares away from the receiver, but no more than 9 squares away. Additionally, all antenna and the receiver have to be within 1 half-wall height of each other in order to function. Importantly, both the receiver and the antenna can be placed on other surfaces than just the floor, like on fences, pillars, tables, or shelves, which means that as long as you are obeying the distance limitation and the overall height distance is less than a half-wall in difference, you can really put your antenna anywhere to improve the aesthetics of your build. Once the receiver is on, note that everything displayed on the screen is relative to the direction the receiver is facing, not necessarily in the direction of travel, so it's best to place the receiver towards the front end of your raft. Smelters are an essential component of progressing beyond the opening parts of Raft, but they can be tricky to manage. To start with a simple smelter, you'll need to collect no less than 14 of each sand and clay found in the reefs off of an island. Then craft them into 7 wet bricks. These wet bricks are then placed on your raft and left to dry for 5 minutes. It always takes 5 minutes regardless of day or night, rain or shine. After 5 minutes is up, you can research a brick and start crafting your smelters. I recommend having at least 2 smelters in the early game. Using these devices, you can convert your ores into usable bars, turn seaweed into vine goo, explosive goo into explosive powder, and sand into glass. Early game smelters are powered by wood, but later in the game, you can unlock the electric smelter with a blueprint on a story island that is predictably powered by electricity. There is no difference in smelt times between the smelters, just a difference in size and fuel type, as well as the capacity of the electric smelter being 3 instead of 1. Simple smelters can also be placed on shelves and tables to make them more space efficient, depending on your raft design preferences. Collection nets are easily one of the most important steps to automating your rafting experience. These placeable items function the same way your hook does on the floating debris around you, but it collects them passively. There are 2 variations of collection nets: the simple collection net that you unlock fairly early in the game, and the late game advanced collection net unlocked after researching titanium. The capacity of the simple net is 10 items, and the capacity of the advanced net is 15 items. Note that barrels and crates only count as 1 item. The advanced net is decently expensive, requiring titanium to craft, but it does come with the added benefit that it does not need to be reinforced in order to be safe from shark attacks. If Jeremiah does start biting your simple net, and you pick up the net before he can fully consume it, you'll be able to replace the net without any loss of durability. If a net is at capacity, Flotsam will pass through it, so you can always place a second or even third line of nets if you're worried about anything slipping by you. Additionally, the trash stream is only 28 tiles wide, centered on the original 4 foundations you spawn in on. So if you truly want to catch everything in the sea, all you need is a centered line of 28 nets in a row, and you'll never have to throw your hook ever again. There are a total of 10 small island varieties in Raft, and you'll want to start visiting them as soon as possible to build up a supply of your second-tier resources. Small islands are home to the best density of resources per area, and are generally simple to navigate and fully loot due to their limited size. Of the 10 small islands, all host an assortment of fruits like pineapples, watermelons, and choppable mango trees. They also have choppable palm trees, which give planks and leaves, as well as coconuts, and a seed that can be grown on your raft. Islands aren't randomly generated, they come from a set pool of hand-designed levels. However, what island you get at any given time is random. Some are better than others for certain types of resources, but these shallow reefs are an excellent source of sand, clay, metal ore, copper ore, seaweed, and even scrap and rocks. There are no enemies on small islands, so aside from Jeremiah, you're free to explore to your heart's content without worry and gather everything you see fit. Simply hoover up everything you need or want, because it's better to have and not need than need and not have when there are no islands in sight later on. Large islands are home to many of the quintessential raft elements, like abandoned buildings, trading posts, and the vast majority of enemies in the game. These islands are quite a bit larger than your typical small island, and also house a number of unique resources, like red berries for advanced cooking recipes and soil for grass plots. They also have the typical fare of small islands, including fruits and trees, as well as these large trees that frustratingly can't be chopped down. When you turn on the receiver, story islands show up as blue dots, but large islands spawn as green dots. So if you're looking to gather any of those unique resources, navigate between green dots. There are only a total of 4 variants of large tropical islands in the game, and the islands will spawn with the same loot in the same place every time, which makes it easy to memorize their layouts and harvest them decently quickly. Additionally, large islands are home to 2 varieties of loot crates with tier 2 smelted resources, making it worth your while to explore and visit the abandoned huts spread throughout the islands. Explore underwater too, because there are unique reef resources like silver algae to pick up as well, and the single most useless item in the game, of course. Of the 33 total possible islands in Raft, 2 are infinitely harder to find than the rest. They can't be found on the receiver, and they aren't tied to any story locations, and they are random chance for whether or not they spawn. A 2% chance for each new small island that's spawned in, that is, and there is an achievement for finding each island. The first of the 2 is the Boat Crash Island, which has a giant HELP flag waving in the wind, as well as a small boat crashed into the island, hence the name Boat Crash Island. Inside the boat, you'll find the only naturally spawning radio and also the rare captain's hat, which is only obtainable on this island. Additionally, there is a wooden loot crate, which are normally limited to large islands. The second rare island variety is the Plane Crash Island, which, similar to the Boat Crash Island, has a plane crashed into it. This one has a fancy pilot's helmet and a wooden loot crate stashed in the back of the plane. Both islands have poison puffers in the water and some large island resources. Sadly, there is no way to guarantee or optimize for rare islands, as it is purely random chance. That being said, your best bet is to load as many small islands as possible by traveling in the direction of the wind and scanning the horizon to spot one of these identifiable features. There are 4 unique biomes with unique features in Raft. The vast majority of the game takes place in the default tropical biome, which is complete with every small island variety in the game, palm trees, most of the aggressive enemies, and just generally the vast majority of regular Raft stuff. But large islands around 3 particular story islands can spawn different biomes and different features. The third story island and surrounding large islands are in the evergreen or boreal biome, and this biome is home to 2 varieties of choppable trees and bears. The 4th story location and surrounding islands are a desert biome, complete with cacti, aggressive hogs, and choppable dead trees. Be warned that certain large desert islands require a zipline tool to fully explore, which is unlocked at the 4th story island. Both the boreal biome and the desert biome are home to bees, which you'll want to pick up to farm honey for biofuel. And finally, the 7th story location and surrounding islands are in the Arctic biome, which is noticeably snowy. These islands are home to the snowy version of the same pine trees from the boreal biome and the polar version of the same bears. To get to any particular biome, set your receiver to its relative story location for the biome that you want, and large islands within 2,000 meters of that story island should spawn as part of that biome, which can be useful to farm certain resources. Building up your raft is one of the main aspects of the game, and Jeremiah the shark likes to chip away at your hard work. Sadly, he can bite through walls, he can bite through detail planks, and he can bite through roofs. The good news is that you can entirely stop shark attacks by armoring, or reinforcing, your foundations. This is the last option in the Build Hammer menu under the Foundation section, and it costs a metal ingot and 2 nails per foundation. You only need to fortify the external ring around your foundations, as Jeremiah is incapable of attacking the middle. If you have a limited amount of metal, you can always fortify in a turtle shape with 1 fortified foundation sticking out every 3 squares, and that functions the same way as a fully fortified row. Additionally, corners have the highest attack rate at 30% aggro chance, so you can all but guarantee an attack on a certain corner by reinforcing all other 3 corners. As a bonus tip, you can always use a sacrificial foundation made from a cheap triangle foundation that only costs 1 plank and 1 plastic to build. That way, if it does get destroyed, you don't lose too many resources. Just know that the further away a foundation is from the center of your raft and the more exposed it is, the more likely it is to be attacked, so plan and fortify accordingly. The shark, or Jeremiah as I like to call him, is probably the best known enemy in Raft. He bites your foundations, he bites you, and is generally a nuisance to most players, but there are some things you should know to ease your dealing with him. For one, Jeremiah attacks in a predictable pattern where he spins away from you, does a 180, and then swims straight for you, lunging as he attacks. If you stab a spear right as he opens his mouth, you can mitigate the attack and not take any damage. Second, his aggro range is only 30 meters out from the raft, and that aggro resets if a player is not in the water, so you can park a slight distance away from an island, swim to the island, wait on land for about 30 seconds, and then fully loot the rest of the reef with no aggressive shark. If you're not comfortable with swimming that far, shark bait lasts for 180 seconds in normal, which is plenty of time to get onto an island, and then you can unstuck back to your raft. If you're still worried about shark attacks, if you manage to kill the shark, loot the 4 meat pieces, but leave the head behind. That will leave the body in the water, where it has to wait 5 minutes to despawn, and then another 3 minutes of shark-free time before it respawns for a total of 8 minutes of completely shark-free time. And you can stop Jeremiah from consuming your raft by using the Foundation Armour we covered in Tip 15. While potatoes and beets are great for stabilizing your early game hunger, in the mid to late game, you're probably going to want some protein in the form of fish. The Raft Ocean is home to 6 varieties of fishes, the small category of pomfrets and herrings, the medium fish of ocean tilapia and mackerel, and the large fish category of catfishes and salmon. Fishing is done with a fishing rod of either the wood or metal variety. The simple rod is unlocked from the start of the game, and has a higher chance to grant small and medium fishes, and the metal rod is unlocked in the research table and has a higher chance to grant large fishes and treasures. Fishing treasures consist of the decorative candle bottle that doesn't give off nearly as much light as it should, the Scrap Duck statue, which is a reference to Scrap Mechanic, a game published by the same company as Raft, the Lucky Cat statue that waves at you, and the Old Shoe, which can be used to farm 1 small crop. Fishing can be done from literally anywhere, regardless of access to water or distance from the ground, and buying bait from trading posts allows you to equip the bait in the rod, which can then be used to catch special, inedible fish whose only purpose is to be sold back to the trading posts. We'll cover that in more detail in the trading posts video, but as an actual marine biologist with a master's degree, I feel obligated to tell you that it is your duty to remove all of the ocean tilapia, as tilapia are a freshwater fish and don't belong in the open ocean, so burn them. If you're interested in some of the finer things Raft has to offer, you'll need to get your hands on some trash cubes out of the recycler to trade. The recycler is unlocked at the top of the first story island by collecting the blueprint off the whiteboard and researching the necessary components in the research table. After that, it needs to be placed on your raft in an area with at least 1.5 by 1 blocks of space available. All raw materials can go into the recycler to create trash cubes, but some are better than others. For example, it takes 200 rocks to fill a recycler, or only 8 pieces of wool sheared off of a tamed llama. For everyday use, the best items to place in a recycler to get trash cubes are palm leaves, because you get so many of them but they aren't used in that many recipes. Note that crafting them into ropes is a slightly easier way to insert them, but that isn't a necessary step as it doesn't grant extra trash cubes. Trash cubes are also the only viable long-term use for giant clams, because you only need a total of 3 to craft every use of them in the game, but it only takes 20 giant clams to fill up the recycler. Plus, they are an instant pickup on island reefs. The recycler can only produce 4 trash cubes at a time, so make sure to regularly empty out the basin and refill the machine to reduce the amount of time needed to acquire all of the necessary trash cubes to purchase whatever your heart desires. The trading posts found on large islands are the key to unlocking unique resources and items to liven up your raft playthrough. Trading posts can be found on every variety of large island in the game, including those on unique biome large islands, but they are never found on story locations. If the dot on the receiver is green, that means it will have a trading post. If the dot is blue, or if there isn't a dot for the island, it will not have a trading post. The 2 modes of currency used by the trading post are trash cubes, which we covered in tip 18, and the special trading coin that you can get by trading in your specialty fish caught by using bait from one of the trading posts. Fishing for specialty fish just involves buying a bait tier with a trash cube from tier 1, fishing 30 tier 1 fish, and then selling them back to the trading post. Then repeat that process with tier 2 bait to trade in 30 tier 2 fish and unlock tier 3 trading. Your reputation is dependent on the fish you sell back to the trading post and will never increase or decrease once tier 3 is unlocked. Tier 3 specialty fish give the highest return in trade coins, but do not give any reputation, so make sure to maximize your early trash cubes by buying low-tiered fishing bait. Once trades are unlocked, you can purchase up to the limit of any item at any given trading post. Some things, like blueprints, only need to be purchased once in a given save and will not give additional benefit once purchased again. The inventories aren't shared between trading posts, so you can go between them to buy up tons of resources and cool decoration items. Some of the unique trades offered at the trading post include recipes for special meals that offer unique benefits, unlike any other consumables in the game. While you don't need to purchase the recipe itself to know the required ingredients, you will need to purchase certain required ingredients like turmeric or juniper from the trading post in order to craft the recipes. Each specialty meal that requires one of the unique trading post ingredients will grant you a special buff or bonus upon consumption. There are 2 juicer recipes and 3 cooking pot recipes that give these buffs. There's the Red Beet Shot, which is named for the developing studio behind Raft, Red Beet Interactive, and it grants bonus health beyond your normal health bar, so it can be used in emergency situations as the health granted is instant, unlike the healing over time from healing salves. The Spicy Pine Berry makes you swim faster underwater and does stack with fins for the fastest swimming speed. The Spicy Pine Berry also goes particularly well with the Salmon Salad, which is the first of the cooking pot recipes, and it makes your breath last longer while underwater. The Catfish Deluxe is the on-land version of the Spicy Pine Berry to make you run faster. And finally, there's the Hearty Stew, which acts very similarly to Minecraft's Totem of Undying, except that it has a time limit and a very minimal amount of regeneration. I find the Red Beet Shot more useful in a near-death experience, but each of these dishes have unique uses that can make them applicable in certain situations. Like most survival games, Raft requires the player to maintain a hunger bar to stay alive, although this isn't as simple as shoving a raw potato down your gullet and hoping for the best. The hunger bar is representative of 100 hunger points, and the scale is not linear. In fact, Raft operates on a craving system where the hungrier you are, the closer to the full value of the food you're eating saturation you will get. So eating a baked potato while your hunger bar is empty will refill close to the full 15 hunger points that cooked potatoes can give, but eating that same baked potato at closer to full hunger could give as little as 5 points back. While it's not a bad idea to keep your hunger bar completely full, it is more beneficial to eat when you're almost empty, particularly in the early game when food resources are more scarce. Just make sure to cook your potatoes before eating them because they grant over 3 times the hunger that way. Additionally, eating specialty meals that you find in food crates or make for yourself can grant a smaller yellow bar referred to as bonus hunger. Despite this bar being 1/3 of the size, it still represents 100 hunger points and can only be added to with special meals. That yellow hunger bar decays at a slower rate than your normal one, so it is worth investing in better meals and better food. The counterpart to tip 21 about hunger, we also need to talk about your other survival metric, thirst, or hydration. For the most part, you'll want to drink water, both in real life and in the game. In Raft, you'll be drinking water purified from seawater, and that constitutes the majority of liquids you take in. A cup of water replenishes 40 points of thirst out of your 100-point thirst bar, but you don't only have to consume water. Most fruit varieties replenish some thirst, with the watermelons found on tropical islands being the best of the fruits. The juicer unlocks the ability to make smoothies, which not only refill between 30 and 70 thirst points depending on the recipe, but also grant the addition of bonus thirst, which is the blue bar that appears when you drink a smoothie. That small bright blue bar also represents 100 thirst points, but can only be added to with smoothie recipes. It's useful for exploring large locations because that bar depletes at a slower rate before your thirst will dip into your normal bar. Or if you just want to carry a lot of water with you, a bottle will hold 5 cups worth, and the canteens unlocked at trading posts will hold 10 cups worth, so you can stay fully hydrated on the go. The cooking pot is a mid to late game cooking station that you can unlock in the research table. It can hold up to 6 planks as fuel and can load 4 ingredients into the soup pot. Not every combination is viable though. In fact, that's what those recipes you find in crates are meant to tell you. In total, there are 12 different recipes that can be made in the cooking pot, including 3 of the specialty meals discussed in tip number 20. These recipes grant the special bonus hunger when consumed, which decays at a slower rate, and a higher base hunger than cooked or raw ingredients. Using ingredients that aren't components to one of the established recipes will create leftovers, which has the same hunger values as a single cooked potato, so make sure that you are always using the correct ingredients for the dish that you want to create. The best early use of the cooking pot is for vegetable stew, which uses any combination of potatoes and beets to make, but gives some of the highest saturation in return. The cooking pot does not have an upgraded electric version like most of the rest of the cooking stations, and will vary its uptime and fuel usage depending on the recipe made. To get a meal out of the cooking pot, you will need to use a clay bowl, which is also unlocked in the research table. Once you use the clay bowl to consume your meal, you do not get it back, so I'm assuming we are just eating it for bonus magnesium. Much like the cooking pot is used for making more advanced recipes to satisfy your hunger, the juicer is here to satisfy all of your thirst needs if you get bored of drinking water. Also, like the cooking pot, the juicer will only accept certain combinations of fruits and ingredients to create the 8 possible smoothie recipes, 2 of which are the special red beet shot to restore health and the spicy pine berry to swim faster discussed in tip 20. The other 6 juicer recipes function the same way as the advanced recipes made in your cooking pot, but have the added benefit of restoring both hunger and thirst. The amount restored is dependent on the recipe, with the most nutrient-dense smoothie being the Mango Nana that restores 40 normal thirst, but also 70 bonus thirst that decays at a slower rate. While there is no juicer recipe made from fully renewably farmed ingredients, your best bet for a smoothie that you can make regularly is the Coconut Beet, which is aptly named considering that it's made with 3 coconuts and 1 beet. Certain recipes, like the one for the Silver Smoothie and the Mango Nana, require goat's milk, which you can obtain by using a bucket on a goat, but be warned that the juicer will blend the bucket into your smoothie for added fiber and you will not get it back. The same thing is true for the drinking glass used to retrieve your smoothie from the juicer, which you will not get back upon consuming your beverage. The juicer operates on battery power, and each recipe takes 90 seconds to blend. Additionally, any combination of ingredients outside of the established 8 recipes will give you the nasty leftover smoothie that's mostly a waste of your time and ingredients, so make sure you're using the right combination before blending. Like most survival games, Raft relies on a health system to know whether or not you would survive a given interaction, with both the enemies and the environment dealing damage to your health bar. If your health bar runs out and you're playing with friends, they can plop you into a bed to rest, and you'll respawn with roughly a quarter of your health bar restored. But if you want to avoid perishing in the first place, your best bet is the healing salves unlocked by researching eggs and clay in the research table, or the good healing salves that also require honeycomb. The normal healing salves restores up to 25% of your maximum health over 5 seconds, and the good healing salves restore up to 50% of your max health over the same 5 seconds, which means that if you have the honeycomb available, the good healing salve is a good investment. Additionally, because the salves operate on a tick usage, you should avoid applying multiple salves at the same time, and wait until the previous salve is finished to apply the next one to get the full effect of both salves. Health does slowly regenerate on its own over time if both the hunger and thirst are above critical levels, but if you need a quick burst of health to withstand an incoming hit, then the red beet shot made in the juicer is your best bet, as it will instantly grant you a small amount of non-permanent bonus health. If you're in an intense boss fight and want to stay alive, try applying a good healing salve and chugging a smoothie, and you should be good to go for the rest of the fight. There are 3 varieties of farm animal that you can find on Raft's large islands. There's the clucker, which looks like a chicken and will drop eggs to use in biofuel cooking or salve crafting. There's the llama that you can shear for wool, which is used to craft armor and backpacks, but is also a fantastic resource to use in the recycler. And finally, there are goats, which you can milk for milk, and that's primarily used in cooking recipes. To obtain any of these animals for your raft, you'll need the net launcher that's unlocked in the research table, as well as the projectile net canisters that constitute the ammo for the net gun. These animals will spawn on all large island varieties as well as certain story islands, and they will attempt to run away from you if you get too close, so your best bet is to get as close as possible before firing your net gun, as a missed projectile cannot be retrieved. Also, these nets are projectiles, so a little bit of aim is required, although the hitbox is fairly forgiving. Once captured, simply walk over to your new animal and pick it up to carry back to your raft. While you're doing this, you can give them a fancy name for free by using the Change Animal Name button. I recommend placing your animals in an enclosed area with plenty of automatically watered grass plots. If your animals look sad, it's because they haven't eaten in a while and need to be fed more grass before they can continue to provide their unique resource. So with an automatically watered plot of grass and roughly 1 animal per plot, you'll have infinite eggs, wool, and milk to go around. The 3 farm animal varieties discussed in tip 26 also come in a gradient of rarities, with each animal having 3 unique colorations. Functionally, these rare animals are no different from their generic counterparts, but if you want to get the Some Look Different achievement for catching a rare animal, or the Expert Wrangler achievement for catching 50 animals, then trying to gather all of them may be a good side goal. These rare variants have a chance to spawn whenever the game spawns a new animal on a large island or story island, with the generic, the brown goat, and the tan llama spawning 88% of the time. For the other 12% chance of spawns, you have an 8% chance to catch the brown and white clucker, the gray goat, and the red llama. And for the most rare variants, at only 4% of the spawns, you can get the pink clucker, the white goat, or the striped llama. Again, the gameplay surrounding these animals is no different, so there's no technical advantage to gathering them, but if you did want a complete set, the most efficient way to check for new rare animal spawns is traveling between the 3rd and 4th story island while visiting large islands in between, as both islands spawn at least 3 animals, and their biome-specific large islands are generally easier to scan through more quickly. Boars, or warthogs as they're referred to in the game's code, are an aggressive enemy found on large tropical islands. As you approach it, the boar will attempt to charge at you, which you can easily sidestep by running perpendicular to the boar's path. Note that boars have a wider aggro range than most animals, and because their attacks generally bring them closer to the player, your best bet is to try and defeat the boar quickly. If you're looking for the easiest way to remove the boar, then I recommend luring it to the beach. Boars cannot swim in this game, so as long as you are below what the game considers to be the boar swimming level, the boar cannot reach you with its charge attack, which means that you are free to stab it without fear of repercussions. You can also do a similar strategy with any small cliffs, although this works better with spears than other melee weapons because of their increased range. Upon perishing, looting the boar's corpse will grant you 3 to 4 leather, 2 raw meat, and 1 warthog head. The leather can be used to craft armor or backpacks, the raw meat can be cooked, and the head makes a nice fancy hat, or can be used to make biofuel. Just be careful when bringing down a boar while it is attacking another player, as that can sometimes have unintended consequences. Stonebirds are probably one of Raft's most annoying enemies, as their primary attack involves flying over you to drop a boulder on your head. Importantly, they will not drop the boulder until they are directly above you, so if you can't get under cover in enough time, keep running in a relatively straight path. If you don't take a path that slows you down, you can actually outrun the boulder as it drops. If you're looking to take down the big bird, then your best bet is a bow and some arrows. Because the arrows in Raft are projectiles, this does require a bit of mechanical skill to account for the projectile speed and the bird's movement. I recommend standing on some high ground so the bird has to take an upward trajectory to fly to you, which makes it easier to shoot down at it rather than shooting up at it, although you can still do that as it approaches you in a straight line to drop its rock. Alternatively, you can use the trading posts on large islands as hiding spots to easily duck in and out of if you're worried about missing. Technically, you can take down Screechers with melee weapons if you're able to get close to them when they land to pick up their boulder. Even so, I would still recommend a bow and arrow because you can deal more damage in less time if you're very close to your target and spam arrows into the bird. Once defeated, they drop feathers and drumsticks like seagulls, but also their head, which you can use in your morbid collection or as mass for your biofuel generator. But frankly, they aren't worth the effort most of the time. While Jeremiah is definitely the most iconic of Raft's marine enemies, there is one more common submerged antagonist that you should be aware of. Those are the poison puffers lurking around large tropical and desert islands. As soon as these puffers detect you, they'll start swimming directly at you and explode once within a certain radius. They leave a massive poison cloud around where they exploded that lasts for several seconds and deals heavy amounts of damage to any player inside of it with a lingering effect. Because the puffers don't explode immediately, you have plenty of time to swim away and leave the puffers' aggro radius before they explode. Usually they're guarding some valuable loot though, and if you want to explore around them, you'll need to take them out using a bow and arrow. It is technically possible to do with melee weapons, although it's not at all practical or consistent, so arrows are generally your best bet. It only takes 4 stone arrows, 3 metal arrows, or 2 titanium arrows to defeat a puffer, and once you do, you'll gain a guaranteed explosive goo and puffer head, along with a 33% chance of a bonus explosive goo. That explosive goo can be dried out in a smelter to get the crafting ingredient explosive powder for recipes like the net canisters and fireworks, and the head can either be used to make biofuel or used in the unique head broth cooking pot recipe. So whether you let them explode or not, it's worth finding the areas around poison puffers for value on and around the animal. Lurkers, or the Waterworld equivalent of Germa's rats, can only be found on 3 of the story locations, and they are one of the more prevalent enemies in those locations. Lurkers come in 2 varieties, the normal brown kind found on story islands 2, 5, and 6, and the larger gray kind which is only found on the 5th and 6th story islands. There's only a slight 20 HP difference between the 2, and they don't drop different loot, so the difference is mostly cosmetic. When defeated, Lurkers will drop 1 or 2 pieces of raw meat that can be cooked in recipes or used as biofuel. Lurkers can only deal damage at close range, and if you're outside of their small melee radius, they will always try to leap towards the player. This makes their attack pattern predictable and easy to sidestep, so that you can then use a spear or sword to damage them and quickly run out of their radius again to repeat the process. Base Lurkers only have 30 HP, which is 6 stabs with a wooden spear or 3 with a metal one. Lurkers also don't do particularly well against elevation, so if you can get them to a point where you have a slightly elevated platform, they will attempt to attack you with their small melee range, making it extra easy to take them down without too much thought. Be wary of looting their bodies if you aren't in need of all of that meat though, as they take significantly longer to respawn if their bodies are left behind, so you don't have to deal with all of those rats jumping at you as you try to explore. If you want to farm large quantities of biofuel to power your engines, you will need plenty of bees to make honey for you. Bees can be found in swarms starting on the 3rd and 4th story islands, and they can be captured using a sweep net crafted under your equipment tab after unlocking it in the research table. To catch a swarm of bees, simply swing your net through the mass, which can be finicky. Bees are also technically an aggressive animal as they can deal 5 damage per sting instance, but unless you are very low health, you shouldn't need armor for collecting bees. Unlike other aggressive animals, bee swarms will not respawn after a certain amount of time, and instead require the player to reload the island for the bees to return. In addition to spawning directly on the 3rd and 4th story islands, bees will also spawn naturally on large islands of both the evergreen and desert varieties, and typically a large island in these biomes will have 2 swarms, with some having 3. That means your best bet for farming large quantities of bees is to set your receiver to one of those locations, sail to all of the nearby large islands to collect their swarms, then change your receiver to the other story location and repeat the process with the other biome. So long as you travel roughly 1,000 meters away from the story island, the large islands will reset and you can continue to alternate between destinations infinitely. One of the very few aggressive underwater animals, the anglerfish can only be found at the 6th and 7th story islands, but only a handful spawn at either location. The easiest way to deal with these anglerfish is with a spear, and to simply stab and swim in a circle, as the anglerfish will always try to swim straight towards the player at roughly the same swimming speed, so by going in a circle, your attack range is greater than its, and you can easily stab them until they flop over. Fun fact, if you stab them after they flop, their little lights flicker. Looting an anglerfish will always grant 1 raw meat and 1 head, with the potential for up to 2 vine goo. Dealing with the anglerfish in situ is generally not that difficult, but if you want the Expert Anglerfish Hunter achievement that is Raft's rarest achievement on Steam, you'll want to farm a large quantity of these guys, which, as I mentioned, isn't ideal as there's only a small handful that spawn at either story island. So if you want to do this the grindy way, just sail back and forth between islands, go on a bit of a spree, and repeat. But if you want a slightly more efficient way, head down to this sunken cave on the 7th story island under the observatory, drop a save, take care of the 2 fish in the tunnel, and then reload your save. Yes, you have to do that 25 times to get the achievement, but it beats 20 kilometers of sailing for me. While the majority of Raft's antagonists can be found in the water or on large tropical islands, there are a few unique spawns tied to certain story locations that you may want to pay attention to. Starting at the 4th story island and on all large desert islands, you can find these pigs, which canonically used to be infected with salmonella, which is why they only drop leather and no meat when disposed of. There are the butler bots on the 5th story island, but those only provide 1 keycard to access buildings and are otherwise useless. On the 7th story island, you can find these beetle-like scuttlers in the radioactive parts. These guys function very similarly to Lurkers, where they lunge and deal damage in close melee distance, but don't deal huge amounts of damage per attack. They spawn in 2 locations in the Saline Research Facility, those being under the tunnel where you spin a wheel, and the main reactor room. Technically, you can farm them for infinite bug meat during the reactor fight, but I'm not sure that raw meat that came from a large irradiated bug is the best thing to consume. And finally, you'll find plenty of hyenas at the last story island. This particular room can become an infinite food generator, the same way the reactor fight with the scuttlers was, if you have a plan to maintain your health and enough storage. Just note that you have to collect any hyena loot you want, like a head for your collection, before you finish this island, as no hyenas are present after the boss fight and there is nowhere else to find them, so grab them while you can. Starting on the 3rd story island, you can find large brown bears scattered throughout the evergreen biome, which spreads for roughly 1,000 meters around where the 3rd story island spawns. Bears have a fairly wide roaming range and a fairly wide aggro radius, which makes it likely that you will encounter an aggressive bear at some point during your exploration. You can outrun bears if you leave far enough out of their aggro range, but they are faster than the player, so you will sustain several hits if you decide to take the coward's route. The easiest method for dealing with bears is by shooting them with a bow and arrow from atop some high ground, which large boulders work particularly well for because you can climb them by spamming jump, but bears cannot pathfind to the top of. You can also find bears of the polar variety on cold biome islands, including the 7th story island. These bears are functionally the same as the brown ones on the evergreen islands, but have a bit more health and deal a bit more damage when they attack. Because of the lack of boulders on the ice islands, I recommend a true distance approach, as bears won't aggro on you if you are far enough outside of their aggro range, but arrows will still deal the same damage. And in case you were wondering, sadly, the snowmobiles don't deal damage upon collision, which means no earth sign hit and runs. Mama Bear is the tankiest boss in Raft, and she can be found guarding a cave towards the west of the 3rd story island. If you want to avoid combat with her, you have 2 primary options. You can use the game's intended method of gathering at least 5 wild berries and placing them into this big blue bin. That will cause Mama Bear to come running over and distracts her from attacking you so long as you don't get too close or deal damage to her. Or for the other passive method, you can fall into the cave from above by finding this dirt patch and run into the back of the cave to reset her aggro. When you've gathered everything and want to leave, simply sprint forward in a straight line until you're out of her aggro radius. Just be warned that you will take at least 1 hit during your escape, but you can survive that at full health. If you do want to take down Mama Bear for the achievement and get her trophy, then be warned that she has the highest HP pool in the game at 750 hit points. Your best bet for dealing with her is either to get on top of this rock ledge to the right of the cave and stab/shoot at her, or to get behind that rock into this crevice where you can still attack her but she cannot attack you. Make sure to bring several weapons or stacks of arrows, as she is quite tanky and will use up at least 1 of every weapon you have available to you at this point in the game, but she will perish after enough hits, leaving you free to enjoy the cave in peace. There are 4 unique bosses within Raft story locations, including Mama Bear on the 3rd island, the White Screecher at the 5th island, the Rhino Shark at the 6th location, and Alpha on the 8th location. The White Screecher can be found flying around Caravan Town. It is functionally no different than the normal orange Screechers that you find on large tropical islands, although for some reason, this boss actually has less HP than the normal variant, which actually makes it easier. Otherwise, treat it the same as you would any other stone bird. The Rhino Shark is the only animal in the game that cannot take weapon damage and must be defeated in a manner similar to bullfighting, except instead of a bull, it's a large shark, and instead of some red flags, it's a series of increasingly large concrete pillars. The easiest method for dealing with this shark is to wait until it cycles around to the opposite side of the room from you, drag a barrel over to your preferred pillar, and create minimal space between you and the pillar without breaking line of sight. The shark has a pretty huge hitbox and will collide with the pillar even if it looks more than halfway off. As for Alpha, he is the most traditional boss fight in the game. Just pay attention to his position and treat him the same way you would a bear. Note that if you use bows during this fight, you'll need a backup bow and several more arrows, but if you use a melee weapon, you'll only need 1 weapon as durability does not decay against Alpha. These bosses aren't necessarily difficult to deal with so long as you prepare ahead of time and have the right equipment for the right boss. There are 2 primary varieties of additional wearable equipment that you'll want to have on you most of the time, which are the oxygen bottle and the flippers. Both are unlocked in the research table without blueprints, and both will help you navigate your time underwater a bit more easily. Your oxygen bottle predictably makes your oxygen meter last longer by about double the length of your normal breath, from 33 seconds up to 60 seconds. The flippers make you travel faster underwater, as your normal swim speed is equivalent to your walking speed, and with flippers, it's the same as your running speed. Both of these stats can be increased further by using the salmon salad and spicy pineberry special meals that I covered in tip 20. Neither the oxygen bottle nor the flippers will take durability decay while you're on your raft or on land, so there's no reason beyond aesthetics to unequip them, but they will continuously take durability decay the instant you touch the water, so be wary of having them equipped if you're conscious of your resources. Other wearable equipment includes the simple and advanced headlights, and both of those require separate blueprints acquired through the story. Headlights work like flashlights that cannot be disabled. The simple one casts a more typical flashlight-style light zone, whereas the advanced one has a greater brightness and area of effect. Be warned that these both continuously lose durability while equipped, so only equip them in dark areas and don't wear them all of the time. Although crafting them is a great use of dead batteries that you don't intend to use, as even an empty battery will grant a full durability headlamp. Like most survival crafting games, Raft employs an armor system to help mitigate the damage that you take, but unlike most survival crafting games, Raft's armor does not block all damage. Notably, it doesn't apply at all to reducing damage taken from drowning, which makes a certain degree of sense, but it also doesn't mitigate any fall damage, which makes slightly less sense. Both the helmet and the boots grant the same amount of protection with 8% damage reduction, and the chest piece gives 12% damage reduction for a full set potential reduction of 28% of incoming enemy damage. Durability decay is based on damage taken instead of damage instances, so dealing with an enemy like Mama Bear will decay your armor faster than dealing with a lower damaging enemy like a Lurker. In terms of crafting efficiency, if you don't have easy access to tons of wool and leather, the helmet is the best to make first because it has the lowest material cost for an 8% reduction. The boots are the second best because they're also significantly cheaper but still grant double the resistance, and the chest piece should be crafted last as it is the most resource intensive but only has slightly more durability and resistance. Like other equipment types, armor durability decay does not decay from instances it's not being used, so if you perish from drowning, you won't lose armor durability outside of the 2/3 durability loss that is inherent to playing in normal difficulty. But it is still a great way to protect yourself from the dreaded Jeremiah. There are 3 primary weapon types in Raft. There's the spears, which are accessible from normal crafting and research table unlocks. There are the swords, which both require blueprints acquired from certain story locations. And finally, you have the bow and arrows, which are unlocked in the research table. Spears have the longest reach and a short cast time, which makes them ideal for dealing with enemies in stationary locations or those that move past the player, like Jeremiah the Shark, or an enemy that you lured onto high ground. Swords are a bit better for their higher damage output against enemies that specifically lunge towards the player in predictable movesets that can be damaged at close range, like Boars or Lurkers. And finally, the bow is best used against airborne and highly mobile enemies, where range is a necessity, like seagulls, screechers, or poison puffers. Arrows are the primary projectile weapon, which means that they both have travel time and drop off in their trajectory. So to get the best bang for your buck, try to aim above where you want your arrow to land and shoot early if your target is moving. Of course, pretty much any weapon can be used against any enemy with good timing and mechanics, but certain enemies are easier to take out with certain weapons. There's also a distinct damage gradient between weapon variants, as the wooden spear deals 5 damage per hit, the metal spear deals 10, the machete deals 15, and the titanium sword deals 20. In my opinion, the metal spear is the best primary weapon, especially in the early to mid-game, as it has decently high damage output while costing significantly less than the machete. By the time you have piles of metal laying around, you'll probably want to swap over to arrows anyways for even higher DPS. While facing off against Raft's many threats, you'll likely want the fastest way to defeat your opponent. The highest damage per second in the game can be achieved via a technique called bow spamming, which is quite literally spamming arrows out of your bow. This is best done at ultra close range because the arrows are projectiles and don't go particularly far without charging up the bow's energy. This mostly works because Raft's arrows do not calculate damage based on momentum, distance, or bow draw. It's just a flat number based on the kind of arrow that you're using, where stone arrows deal 5 damage, metal arrows deal 15, and titanium arrows deal 20 damage per arrow. In my opinion, metal arrows are the best bang for your buck, considering that titanium can be spent better elsewhere, and it's a more limited resource for not a hugely significant difference in damage. Generally, there's a breakpoint of 1 or 2 more metal arrows over titanium arrows per target, but you're likely going to shoot a few arrows too many anyways with this method. Be warned that bow spamming does consume quite a lot of the bow's durability, as the durability is dependent on uses, so this method does go through quite a lot of plastic and vine goo. The advantage of bow spamming, in addition to its high DPS, is that most enemies have a damage taken animation that prevents them from going into an attack animation, effectively stun locking them and ensuring that you win the fight. This also works on nearly every boss aside from the Rhino Shark, and with enough arrows, even taking down Mama Bear becomes a walk in the park. In my humble opinion, seagulls are the second most annoying creature in Raft after the deaded Screechers that drop rocks on your head. The only function of seagulls is to try and attack your crops, and they can attack any seed planted in a small or medium crop plot. Seagulls will never attack any variety of tree, so you don't need to worry about defending those ones. You can prevent seagull attacks temporarily with a basic scarecrow, and it will block attacks in a 3 foundation radius. The basic scarecrow can take 3 seagull attacks before needing to be replaced, but the advanced scarecrow will permanently deter seagulls in the same radius. If you don't want a scarecrow on your raft, you can still block attacks by placing your crop plots in any enclosed building space. Windows also count as solid walls for seagull pathing, but the player can easily reach through them, which makes a small greenhouse layout viable for the early game. Additionally, crop plots placed under crafting stations like the research table or cooking pot are also immune to seagull attacks, which makes the perfect first farm setup. If you want to deal with these seagulls more permanently, you can place nests on your raft that seagulls will perch in, and that makes them easy stationary targets for the bow and arrows, as well as a passive source of feathers. Seagulls can only be attacked with melee weapons when actively attacking scarecrows or crops, which makes the nests a more viable, consistent approach and prevents them from terrorizing your farms. Fireworks are unlocked via a blueprint found at the 4th story island after launching a small rocket, and you can use them to spice up your raft. Fireworks are crafted with explosive powder and can be handheld to fire or placed on your raft. Placed fireworks can be painted in any color, which does change the color of the explosion in the sky, although handheld fireworks will always be white. Fireworks placed on the raft can also be rotated for some variation in launch direction, although be warned that the projectile will collide with any nearby structure and explode on impact. The explosion has no splash damage. Direct hits deal 20 damage, which is the highest weapon damage in the game alongside the titanium sword and arrows. That's perfect, because seagulls only have 20 HP, so a well-timed show can eliminate these pesky birds. Weirdly, seagulls are the only enemy that fireworks deal damage to, so you can't use them against screechers or bears, but you can use them against your friends. For some reason, fireworks alongside rocks are the only weapon types that do not require friendly fire to be enabled to damage your friends, so you can do a little bit of trolling even when your friends are in peaceful difficulty. And you can look great while doing so.
When you first load into a new raft world, your tiny 4 foundation square will begin constantly moving north at a constant speed of 1.5 meters per second as it is pushed by the current. If you want to alter that speed, you're going to need some additional equipment. Your first option is the sail, which does not speed up your raft at all and is intended for early steering, but it can act as a makeshift anchor when pointed against the wind. The sail will only slow your speed, but it can help you move your raft in a more useful direction. For a more permanent increase in your base raft speed, you'll want to invest in an engine, as its constant chugging can bring your speed up to roughly 2 meters per second. That speed is constant so long as you have one engine for every 100 foundations, but for rafts less than 600 foundations large, adding one additional engine above the necessary number does grant an increase in speed up to 2.5 meters per second. Notably, this doesn't apply to rafts greater than 600 foundations, as only 6 engines quote-unquote move the raft at once. Collection nets also do not count as foundations for the sake of engine power, so don't worry about having too many of those. Finally, the paddle is the most powerful movement tool in Raft, as this tiny shovel grants 1.5 meters of move speed, doubling the idle drifting speed. The paddle is meant to be used to go against the current and push the raft if it ever gets stuck on an island, but it works when going with the wind for additive speed too, and is technically the fastest way to move your structure, no matter the size. If you're tired of bumping into islands in your early raft save, then you should probably invest in a sail to help you steer. The sail is crafted under the Navigation tab and is available from the start of the world without any additional unlocks. It requires at least 1.5 foundations of space to place and needs to be opened and rotated to impact your raft's direction. The sail does not add additional raft speed when going with the wind, but can all but stop your raft when going against it, so if you don't have the resources for an anchor on hand, try rotating your sail to at least slow you down. Unlike other navigation equipment, placing a sail is not locked into the building grid and does not require open tiles or floors to be placed on, so it can be placed on top of tables, cabinets, and other decorative raft elements, including pillars. The center of the sail has to be initially placed on a vertical pillar with horizontal pillars making up the width of the placement requirement, but the vertical pillar can be removed once the sail is in place, which means that you can use multiple sails in a decorative manner for more advanced ship designs. Later in the game, the sail becomes a less viable option when compared to the combination of the steering wheel and engines, but it is the best navigation tool available when you're just getting started. Engines are a mid to late game navigation tool that you can unlock via a blueprint found on the second story location. Right next to that blueprint is another blueprint for a steering wheel, which will make using your engine significantly easier, as the engines alone can only power a raft forwards or backwards. Once unlocked and crafted, engines require a minimum of 3 foundations worth of space with a gap of 3 foundations next to it. After an engine is placed, the middle foundation can be removed, but there are very few situations where that is recommended. Importantly, Jeremiah can and will destroy a foundation that an engine is placed upon if it's on the edge of your raft. And removing either end piece destroys the engine, so ensure that those foundation pieces are fortified to prevent shark attacks. Engines require fuel to operate, and you can either use 20 planks or 1 can of biofuel to fully fuel an engine's tank. Either way, you will lose a tiny bit of value off of either source, so you could always wait to put in the last plank until you've traveled a little bit, or use a fuel tank to get maximum value. A single engine can power 100 foundations at full speed, but the instant you place that 101st foundation, the engine will begin stuttering and spout smoke, reducing you to your idle drifting speed. That 100 foundation limit only applies to your first 6 engines though, so if you ever make a massive 600 foundation raft, you will still only need 6 engines to power it at the same speed as a 100 foundation raft with 1 engine. Anchors are your best bet for stopping your raft in place if you ever want to explore a cool island or story location, but not all anchors are created equal. At the start of the game, you can use the throwable anchor that's available in the Navigation tab before you research any materials. This anchor needs 1 foundation to place, but can be placed against a wall so long as that wall is next to an open space. The throwable anchor is, as the name implies, throwable into the water, but note that this anchor is single use and cannot be retrieved. If you picked up the anchor but are not ready to throw it yet, simply right-click it to automatically set it back down onto its tile. The mid-tier anchor is unlocked in the research table with metal ingots, but requires a 3x3 area to place. The 3x3 area needs to be empty when the anchor is placed, but afterwards, multiple building structures like fences, roofs, and walls can be placed in the area and non-supporting foundations can be destroyed. This anchor is infinitely reusable, but must be both lowered and raised manually. Finally, the advanced anchor is only unlocked via a blueprint found on the 7th story location and requires titanium to craft. This anchor can be raised and lowered manually, but also can be controlled via the engine controls, and the remote access can be useful on larger rafts where the anchor and steering wheel may be further apart from each other. The windmill is unlocked via a blueprint found on the 6th story island, and it requires titanium to craft. The main function of the wind turbine is to recharge batteries, which the only other method for is via the battery charger unlocked via parts found at the 4th story location. The advantage of the windmill is that it passively regenerates energy versus the battery charger requiring biofuel for the same service. The windmill can charge up to 4 batteries at a time compared to the battery charger, which can only handle 2. The downside of a windmill when compared to a battery charger is placement, as a battery charger only takes up 1 tile and the windmill is much larger in both directions. However, the windmill is not locked into the building grid and can therefore be placed almost anywhere with enough space. Placing a windmill higher in the air will charge the batteries faster, as indicated by the voltage meter on the windmill's model. At sea level, it will take 7 minutes to charge a simple battery, but at 3 walls tall and above, it will take just under 2.5 minutes. When compared to the battery charger's static speed of 3 minutes to charge a simple battery, the increased capacity and speed of the windmill, while not requiring any player input or materials, is an easy swap for the late game. There are 2 varieties of batteries in Raft. There's the simple battery that's unlocked in the research table, and there's the advanced battery that's unlocked via a blueprint found on the 6th story location. The simple battery has a capacity of 50 uses, with a use lasting 10 seconds for continuously powered devices. That means a simple battery will power something like a receiver for 500 seconds, or turn on a sprinkler 50 times. The advanced battery has a much greater capacity at 175 uses, or roughly half an hour of continuous use. Both kinds of batteries can be recharged to full capacity via a windmill or battery charger, and the battery capacity does not decrease over time. While it is likely that you will drain multiple simple batteries before gaining access to the advanced battery, don't dispose of them before their time, as a fully depleted simple battery can still be used in crafting recipes for tools like both varieties of headlights and the metal detector. While these tools cannot be recharged and will break upon full use, a fully depleted battery will still craft a full durability tool. You'll need to put the battery into the research table to unlock those recipes in the first place, so make sure you've gotten your fair use out of your batteries before you make the decision to get rid of any, while swapping them out for the upgraded version. While gathering flotsam is technically the most efficient method of gathering large amounts of wood in Raft, you can guarantee a steady supply of planks and additional bonus resources by setting up a tree farm. There are a total of 5 tree types you can grow on your raft: the common palm tree, mango trees, banana trees, birch trees, and pine trees. Palm seeds are gathered by chopping trees on tropical islands, which grants 4 planks and 2 leaves per tree, with a 17% chance of dropping a coconut and a 12% chance of dropping a seed per hit. Mango seeds are gathered from mango trees on tropical islands, and chopping them grants 2 planks and 2 leaves, with 1 guaranteed mango, but additional mangoes and seeds are a 14% chance per hit. Bananas can only be found in the plantation area of the 5th story island, and chopping them grants 2 bananas and 3 planks, with a 27% chance for bonus bananas and seeds per hit. The last 2 tree types, birch and pine, are gathered by chopping certain small trees on the 3rd story island, but they are the most efficient wood source from trees, with both varieties granting 7 planks per tree and a 14% chance of dropping seeds per hit. When growing trees on your raft, they must be placed in a large crop plot, but note that there is no difference aside from aesthetics in a slightly smaller base in the advanced large crop plot when compared to the simple large crop plot, so just use whatever system best fits the raft design you're going for. Farming crops on your raft is a good method for long-term survival, but not all food farms are created equal. The 2 crops available from the start of the game, the potato and the beet, are the only fully renewable food source, as planting 1 beet or potato will always return 2 of that variety. So long as you always plant one and consume the other, you will never run out of potatoes or beets. That isn't true of the rest of the food crop varieties, as pineapples, watermelons, strawberries, coconuts, mangoes, and bananas are all dependent upon planting seeds, and seeds are always a percentage chance to drop when harvesting a given crop type. Generally speaking, crops have a 2/3 chance of returning a seed upon harvest, which means that your seed supply will slowly dwindle over long-term harvesting without picking up additional seeds from naturally occurring plants. In the case of strawberries and bananas, that means revisiting the 5th story island repeatedly to replenish your seed supplies. For planting your seeds, the only difference between simple and advanced crop plots is capacity. A simple small crop plot holds 3 plants, where an advanced plot holds 4, and a simple medium crop plot holds 2 plants, where an advanced plot holds 4. In terms of sprinkler efficiency, advanced crop plots are technically more efficient due to the elevated capacity per use ratio, but simple small crop plots have the advantage of more placement options, including smaller hitboxes and ceiling placement. Advanced medium crop plots are generally a better use of space and materials than their simple counterparts, however. If you want to farm large amounts of honey to make biofuel to power all of your engines, you will need to have several beehives on your raft. Beehives can be unlocked in the research table after using a sweep net to catch bees in a jar, for which you'll have to have made it to at least the 3rd story island to find, but once unlocked and crafted, can be placed anywhere on your raft as a passive source of honeycomb generation. The amount of honeycomb a beehive produces is dependent on the amount of nearby flowers within a 1.5 foundation radius of a beehive. Having 3 to 5 flowers nearby will produce 1 honeycomb, 6 to 11 flowers produces 2 honeycomb, and 12 or more flowers produces the maximum 3 honeycomb every 8 minutes. Flowers can be shared between beehives without losing their impact, so with smart farm layouts utilizing vertical space, you can farm multiple max-level beehives without having to plant 40 billion flowers. After harvesting your honeycomb, it must be processed into honey, which is another recipe unlocked in the research table and does require glass. Honey itself can either be put into the biofuel refiner or eaten raw, which grants just 10 hunger points, but it is the only uncooked food item to give the valuable bonus hunger that decays at a slower rate. No matter how you use your honey, the glass from the jar is not returned upon use, so it's a good idea to have plenty of glass on hand to continue your honey production. Running your engines on your raft requires plenty of fuel, and unless you want to go through stacks of planks every 12 minutes to keep them running, you'll probably want to invest in some biofuel. Biofuel can be made through 2 tiers of refiners, the first of which is unlocked via a blueprint on the 3rd story island. The simple biofuel refiner can be placed anywhere on your raft as it isn't locked into the building grid, whereas the advanced biofuel refiner requires at least 2 open foundations to place and is locked into the building grid. Both varieties produce biofuel via inserting some sort of raw food into the larger receptacle and honey into the smaller receptacle. Biofuel is produced at a rate of 1 can of biofuel per 1 jar of honey in both refiners, but the best way to optimize your biofuel output is via the type of raw food added. Potatoes and beets are the least efficient, requiring a full stack to produce just 1 biofuel. Although the game UI says raw food, technically all kinds of animal heads also work, even though the only edible head is the one from the poison puffer. The puffer head produces fuel at a slightly more efficient rate than most heads, as it only takes 2 heads to make 3 biofuel cans. Although technically, Mama Bear and Alpha's heads are the best items to put in the refiner, as they only require 1 head to make 3 biofuel. I'd recommend keeping them as trophies though. There are 2 kinds of pipes that you can place on your raft. The fuel pipes unlocked via a blueprint found on the 3rd story island, and the water pipes unlocked via a blueprint found on the 5th story island. Both types of pipes have an infinite capacity and unlimited rate, so there's no issues associated with making your pipe super strong or super steep, as all liquids are instantly teleported from their source to their destination. Water pipes will only connect to devices that receive or distribute water, and fuel pipes will only connect to devices that receive or distribute biofuel. Pipes can also attach through structure pieces, and devices that are placed against walls can have a pipe on the opposite side of a wall that will connect, regardless of a hole in said wall. However, for getting just pipes to connect through structures, you have a few options. Pipes will always connect through any variety of windows, any variety of fences, or upside-down triangle walls. They will also connect through doors, but be warned that the door must be open when you log out of a world, or the pipes will become disconnected when you log in next. You can also get pipes to connect up through flooring if a square is made out of 2 triangles instead of 1 full square. Pipes are locked into the building grid and will always place at the center of a tile, but objects can be placed within the tile after a pipe is down with no collision issues, so either run them along your floor for efficiency, or outside of your boats for improved aesthetics. Just like there are 2 kinds of pipes in the game, there are also 2 varieties of tanks to be used to hold large volumes of liquids on your raft. The fuel tank is unlocked via a blueprint found on the 3rd story island, and the water tank is unlocked via a blueprint found on the 5th story island. Both tank varieties are locked into the building grid, where the fuel tank only takes up 1 tile, and the water tank takes up 2 tiles. The water tank has separate input and output inlets that are separated by a brick barrier, but the actual input and output don't matter so long as the entire system is connected, so just move your water pipes out by 1 layer for easier piping. Water is always consumed in a use or by cup basis, so the tank will always contain a whole number of water available, making it comparatively useless as the electric purifier is unlocked at the same time and has decent internal water storage at a smaller footprint. The fuel tank, on the other hand, is a worthy investment, particularly before unlocking the advanced biofuel refiner that can store uncanned biofuel by itself. That's because, unlike water, biofuel is used on a time basis instead of a cup basis, meaning your system can hold partial cans of biofuel. Like the tank of an engine can technically hold 50 units, but a can represents 60 units. So by using a fuel tank and pipes, you can save that leftover 10 fuel units and produce less biofuel overall with the same results. If you want to keep animals or crops on your raft, you'll probably want to invest in a sprinkler to keep everything automatically watered. The sprinkler is unlocked via the research table and can be placed on any floor or foundation, but is locked into the building grid, meaning that it cannot be placed on tables, shelves, detail planks, etc. The sprinkler has a capacity of 5 cups, or 5 uses, of water, and it will check every 5 seconds to see if any crop plots in its range need watering. The range of a sprinkler is 3x3 foundations, as denoted by this diagram on the side of the machine, but it also goes up half a wall from the floor, as well as down half a wall from the floor. This means that the most efficient use of space within a sprinkler's radius elevates the sprinkler by a half wall, and then has the most available wall space around the sprinkler to add additional small crop plots on. No matter what kind of crop plot you are watering, from the smallest flower in a shoe to an entire tree, each plot takes exactly one use of water. But to save your fresh water for more important uses before you unlock its automation upgrade, the sprinkler can be filled with salt water and will function normally. Although you cannot water your crops with salt water by hand, the sprinkler magically does not care if the water contains salt and can be filled directly from the ocean without a purifier. Just don't try that on your real plants. After 30 minutes has passed in a given save file, you'll notice that there are these small brown boxes that appear whenever you pick up barrels, crates, or loot boxes. These boxes can then be opened to unlock crafting recipes under the Decoration tab of your crafting menu. Each box opened will give one random type of decoration. Note that truly means one decoration item. If you want to unlock all of the paintings that you can put in your bedroom, you'll need to open more packages for that, even though the recipes are identical and stored in a stacked menu. In total, there are 66 unique items that are unlocked via decoration packages, and as soon as you open that 66th package, the decoration packages will stop spawning in your world. However, if you manage to collect more than 66 boxes in total before unlocking the last recipe, you can have leftover boxes in a vanilla save. These extra boxes don't do anything for you, they don't drop additional loot or hidden recipes, they're just a fun keepsake to take up space in your storage. I would argue that the best item to come out of decoration packages is the wooden bathtub. Not because it's particularly useful, I just think there's something funny about Jeremiah trying to eat you while you're in a bathtub. Building up your raft into a livable, functional space is kind of a central aspect of the game literally called Raft, but there are more build methods than you may think, particularly not when Jeremiah wants to come munching on your foundations. However, just because your raft needs to be practical doesn't mean it has to be ugly. The majority of newer raft players will simply build a large flat platform with a few raised areas for certain equipment, but so much more is possible even with Raft's limited build options. Personally, I enjoy building ships and other nautically themed designs to fit within Raft's world lore a bit more easily, and it's easy enough to do by creating something with a bit more dimension and dedicated shape that isn't just a square. Beyond the shape of your raft, learning to decorate your interiors is equally as important, because you'll spend just as much time inside your raft as you will looking at it longingly from an island. The number one tip for this is clutter. Empty spaces will feel, well, empty. Raft may not have the biggest catalog of decoration objects, but the few that are here can be combined for some wonderful effects. And don't forget to experiment with items that you think you already understand, because things like the craftable plant pots can be hung from the wall or ceiling just as easily as they can be placed on a floor or shelf. Just because you're stuck on an endless ocean doesn't mean that your time has to be boring and dull. Not every raft design needs to be aesthetically beautiful, and not every raft design needs to be perfectly automated. But what if I told you that your raft could be both? This is where the idea of functional decoration comes in, because you can have everything your raft needs to operate and still have it look nice too with a bit of creativity. For instance, using the large wooden table as an oversized shelf for your storage system takes what would be a cluttered mess of storages hanging from a wall and turns it into a rather compact, easy to use, and much nicer to look at storage system. This idea can be taken to extremes by combining a bit more game knowledge with some added willpower, and that's exemplified by areas like this fully functional kitchen. By using either grass plots or carpets, you can force certain crafting stations, like a cooking pot, to nest into a floor that they would otherwise collide with, and by building an access area with a window and hiding with a shelf and a curtain, you have a perfectly functional kitchen that looks a little bit nicer. You can take this one step further by designing something like this custom stove, by placing 2 triangle floors in a 1x1 half-wall tall area, putting a circle carpet on top, and using that carpet to clip a few simple grills underneath your new stovetop so the grill part is still exposed. And it is fully functional. It's important to remember that Raft is a sandbox game, and you should have fun and be creative as you progress through your save. There are 3 varieties of beds that you can use as respawn and rest points on your raft. There's the leaf bed that's available from the start of the game that restores 40% of your maximum health at the cost of 20% of your hunger and thirst bars. This bed can be placed on the floor or hung from the wall like a shelf, which can make it an efficient use of space when hung over a set of chests. The 2 advanced bed varieties of the fancy bed and the hammock are both unlocked via the decoration packages that start spawning after you've played in a given save for at least 30 minutes, and they both require feathers to craft. The fancy bed will restore up to 70% of your maximum health at a reduced cost of 7.5% of your hunger and thirst. The hammock shares these same stats when it is placed on the floor, but inexplicably has different statistics when hung from the ceiling like a normal hammock, where it will instead drain 10% of your hunger and thirst for the same 70% of health restored. In addition to skipping the 6.5-minute night cycle when sleeping on a bed, All active crafting stations, like smelters or grills, will instantly complete their use cycle once a player sleeps through the night. So if you're in a pinch for some materials before leaving for an island, simply take a quick nap in a fancy bed to skip the waiting time. If you've been hoarding tons of materials to build the ultimate raft, then you're going to need a place to store all of those resources in one of the 3 available storage boxes in the game. There is the simple storage box that's available from the start of the game, the medium chest-like storage unlocked in the research table, and the large locker-type storage that requires titanium to craft and is unlocked via a blueprint found at the 5th story location. Technically, there are also 3 varieties of decorative cabinets, but those only have 4 storage slots each, and there's the fridge that you buy from trading posts, but that only has 5 more storage slots than the medium storage while being significantly larger. The small storage box can hold 8 stacks of items, the medium box can hold 20, and the large storages can hold 40 stacks. Both the medium and small storages can fit under certain crafting stations, like underneath the sides of the cooking pot, or below the research table for easy and compact storage. 2 larger storages can fit in 1 tile of space, but in the same space, you can fit up to 8 medium chests via hanging them directly from the wall. My personal favorite storage system to maximize both efficiency and aesthetic involves placing 3 chests on the ground, hanging the large table found under the decoration tab like a shelf directly above those chests, layering more chests on top of the table, and repeating another time for a total of 9 medium chests in a compact but easy to access layout. This layout is more efficient than a large storage, but is also nicer to look at than cramming as many chests as you can into a cubby. There are 4 difficulties of Survival Raft: Peaceful Mode, Easy Mode, Normal Mode, and Hard Mode. There's also technically a Creative Mode, but that's not Survival Raft and will be covered in more detail in tip number 64. These 4 survival difficulties all have their unique quirks, but share a scaled difficulty curve for certain key gameplay aspects. For instance, the higher the difficulty, the more quickly your hunger and thirst will decay. Or enemy damage becomes more extreme the higher your difficulty is. But each difficulty also has certain qualities that differ from the others, like enemies being neutral in peaceful mode. They'll only retaliate once if you hit them, and will otherwise completely ignore you. The only exception to mob neutrality in peaceful are 2 key bosses needed to beat the game in the intended manner. If you perish, you keep all of your items that you had on you without any durability loss. In easy, enemies are aggressive, but you keep your inventory the same way you do in peaceful. In normal, however, you'll lose 2/3 of your inventory and 2/3 durability on any tools that you have. The 2/3 is calculated as a whole number and rounds down. So if you had a stack of 5 items in your pocket when you passed, you'd wake up with only 1. But at least you get to respawn, unlike hard mode, which we'll talk about in tip 63. Raft's hard difficulty is equivalent to many games' hardcore modes, where once you perish, you're gone for good. Your only option is to exit back to the main menu, and your save will be deleted. That is, unless you're playing with multiple people. The only way to respawn in hard mode Raft is to have another player put you in a bed where it will restore your health and bring you back to life. Hunger and thirst will decay the fastest in hard when compared to other modes, and enemies will deal the most damage. You, however, will deal less damage, as your attacks only deal 80% of the damage that they otherwise would. So a wooden spear deals 4 damage instead of 5, and a titanium arrow does 16 damage instead of 20. And be wary of taking out Jeremiah, because every time you do, there is a small chance that he'll come back with a friend. In fact, you can have up to 5 sharks circling your raft in a vanilla save thanks to this mechanic, and they'll all attack your raft more frequently too. Note that their damage timers stack on sharkbait too, so the more sharks there are munching on it, the shorter the amount of time that sharkbait will last for. But beyond that, hard difficulty plays just like the rest of them. Just keep yourself alive and you'll be good to go. Creative mode is technically the 5th difficulty option in Raft, but note that this is not a survival difficulty. Your hunger and thirst bars will not decay, and there are no ways to take damage. Jeremiah is the only enemy that can even spawn, and he doesn't seem all that interested in you. Your raft will not move in this mode, so there's no possibility of visiting islands or seeing how wave action will affect your platform. Even with mods, islands cannot be spawned in creative difficulty, and you'll just get an error message. However, creative mode is an excellent way to test your potential raft designs and experiment with equipment that you either don't fully understand or want to make sure that you leave space for in your later build. I personally rely on creative mode when designing my more aesthetic raft builds because I don't want to have to worry about gathering and potentially losing stacks of materials when I make a mistake. This mode is meant to be treated as a sandbox rather than a way to truly play the game. Also note that there is no method for converting a creative mode save into a survival difficulty world without the help of mods. With the help of a blueprint mod, you can transfer builds made in creative into a survival world, or you could simply use the game mode mod to switch your world type. Other than that, creative worlds are meant for, well, being creative. Titanium is the ultimate late-game resource in Raft, and it's required to craft many of the advanced blueprints encountered on later story islands. This resource is decently limited, with its first natural occurrence on the 4th story island in a hidden save, although it is infinitely farmable via treasure hunting using the metal detector to dig up briefcases and safes. And the ore is available as a Tier 3 trade via the trading posts found on large islands. To use titanium, you'll need to smelt the accumulated titanium ore into bars, which will take 2 minutes of smelt time in either variety of smelter. The best method for acquiring large volumes of titanium is to travel in the direction of the wind to spawn new islands and visit every green dot that appears on your receiver. Those green dots translate to normal large islands, each of which are guaranteed to have the 15 titanium ore that you can purchase from the trading posts, as well as a guaranteed 3 treasure spots. Titanium has an 8.5% chance to drop from either advanced loot table of safes and briefcases, with 1 guaranteed titanium per briefcase and 3 guaranteed titanium for safes, meaning that if you get lucky and dig up 3 safes, you're guaranteed a bare minimum of 24 titanium ore from a single large island. Although I personally do not believe in physics nor its ability to hurt me, the gravity in Raft is a bit strange, to say the least. For instance, fall damage is a thing in the game, and that makes sense, as jumping off of a cliff should hurt a little bit. However, Raft only starts calculating fall damage after the player has been falling for 1.4 seconds, and falling for that long only does a base damage of 10. And the fun thing about that is that fall damage actually has a hard cap of 50 damage, so if you are going to take fall damage, it will always be between 10 damage and 50 damage. And that means, so long as you have at least 51 health, or just an atom above half of your health bar, you can never die from fall damage. But fall damage isn't the only reason that gravity in Raft is weird. For the most part, building your Raft structure requires supports within one tile of the tile that you want to expand on, almost in a pyramid-like structure for vertical expansion. However, triangles are fully exempt from this rule, so if you want to build a fancy design and you don't want walls or pillars everywhere, just build your floors out of triangles instead of squares, because once those are placed, they no longer obey the rules of physics and will float independently. Not to mention some of the other notable reasons that gravity isn't real. There are a total of 6 varieties of loot crates that you can find in Raft, each of which have a different loot table that can help supply your journey across the endless waves. The first of these that you're likely to encounter is the Island Cooler, aka the loot box found on small islands, abandoned rafts, and some large islands with a blue bottom and a reddish-pink top. These loot boxes have a high chance of dropping wood and rope, and a mild chance of dropping second-tier smelted resources like bolts and hinges, as well as glass and vine goo. The second most common variety is the large wooden crate that you'll find on specialty small islands, story islands, and next to abandoned structures on large islands. These crates have a higher chance to grant second-tier smelted resources, as well as a small chance to drop certain pieces of equipment, like metal hooks or paddles. Food coolers can only be found on certain story locations, and only drop consumables, although they do have a chance to grant the cooked meals that give the bonus hunger stat covered in Tip 21. Safes and briefcases are more typically associated with treasure hunting, but can be found as standalone loot boxes on certain story islands, and these have a chance to drop titanium and a host of other treasures, but notably lack the ability to drop the rare developer paintings or robot toys. And finally, the last loot crate type is the metal toolbox. These are only found on certain story islands, but have a high chance to drop second-tier smelted resources, biofuel, and some other metal tools. To spruce up your Raft playthrough and your Raft build, you'll likely want to get your hands on some of the game's 22 unique pieces of headwear. 10 of those hats are the heads looted from various mobs in the game, including 3 unique wearable boss heads from Mama Bear, the White Screecher, and Alpha. While these heads do make great decorations for either your boat or your scalp, heads can also be used in the biofuel refiner to help power your ship, and more renewable heads like puffer heads or shark heads provide good returns on biofuel compared to other raw foods. As for the other 12 hats, 7 of them are unique cosmetic items that can only be obtained from the trading posts found on large islands. There are also 2 unique story hats, like the Mayor's hat that is only available in the Mayor's office on Caravan Town, and the construction hat that can only be found on an underwater crate at Veruna Point. However, the last 3 hats will require a bit of effort, as the Captain's hat can only be obtained by finding the rare shipwreck island that only has a 2% chance to spawn when a new small island is loaded, or the equivalent pilot's helmet for the plane crash island with the same spawning odds. And finally, the rarest hat you could add to your Raft collection is the Tiki Mask, because that requires finding all 4 unique Tiki pieces and stacking them in the correct order. That causes a fancy animation and binds the heads together into one totem. On the back of that totem, you will find the rarest hat in the ocean. If you've ever been in the unfortunate situation of forgetting to anchor your raft or being left behind by your friends, you don't actually have to restart your game or load your last save. The unstuck button will solve all of those problems for you. Simply idle in the water for 30 seconds without moving, refresh your pause menu, and click the unstuck button that appears at the top of the menu. This will always teleport you back to the center of mass of your raft, no matter the distance. If you are standing on your raft and unstuck, it will teleport you to the same place. However, if you are standing on any random, non-story island, the unstuck button will always teleport you to the south beach of that island. You can even use the unstuck button while passed out, so if you have a friend to revive you, you can both unstuck and find each other that way instead of hopelessly giving directions while you stare at the grass. If you're on a story island, the unstuck button will always teleport you to a set location on that island. For example, the radio tower will always teleport you to this corner on the first level, or on Tangaroa, it will always teleport you right outside of this door. However, Temperance is the only island in the game without an unstuck location. Instead, it will always take you back to your raft. But by using the unstuck button, you never have to worry about losing your raft or your save ever again. When Balboa Island was introduced to Raft with the release of Chapter 2, Redbeat added the unique ability to throw rocks, which was primarily meant to be used to solve one particular puzzle on that island. However, rocks can be thrown as a semi-functional ranged weapon. Rocks deal 5 damage upon impact with an enemy, which is actually the same amount of damage as a wooden spear. However, rocks have a pretty steep projectile drop-off, which can make them hard to actually use against anything too far away from you. That being said, rocks are plentiful when gathered passively and abundant when gathered actively. So to save on spear durability, you could always pelt Jeremiah with stones when he comes to launch on your raft. Or, as is one of my personal favorite pastimes, you can throw rocks back at Screechers so they can see what it feels like. I'm passionate enough about this that I propose hitting a Screecher with a rock should be its own achievement. But if you need a steady supply of rocks to hold your own between Screecher battles, the single best place to farm stones is actually the rare Boat Crash Island, where below the waves you will find an absolutely ridiculous 146 stones on just this one island. So make good use of them and return them to sender. Raft has a number of built-in shortcuts that are designed to make your gameplay experience more smooth. So here are a couple of quick methods you can use to enhance your playthrough. For one, if you're crafting something more advanced like an engine, but you don't have the right number of bolts or rope prepared, if you have access to the requisite materials for those items in your inventory, you can just click the little green plus over the item and subcraft materials that way without having to navigate through all of the menu multiple times. Number 2, if you're looking at a storage screen, the first button in the top right will quickly move all matching items from your inventory into your storage, and the other button will automatically sort your storage. If you're on PC, you can also quick add items to storage by pressing Y. Speaking of keybinds, here are a few less well-known ones that I find useful. Backslash will trigger auto run to let you sprint in a set direction without holding sprint or W. Period will hide or show your UI, and comma will put you into third-person view. If you're playing in creative mode, you can also hit N to enter no-clip mode, which is essentially a free cam that lets you place and remove build pieces without having to get your physical character model into place. All of these keybinds are customizable in your settings, so change them to whatever works best for you. Depending on which platform you're playing Raft on, there are a different number of possible achievements to unlock to truly 100% the game. On Steam, Raft has a total of 104 achievements, the vast majority of which are duplicate achievements for taking out 1, 10, or 50 of a given mob type, or very mundane achievements for hooking 5,000 items or painting 1,000 foundations. However, on the console ports of the game, there are only 42 achievements, as Redbeat removed most of the redundant ones. There is also the Master of the Seas achievement that is unique to the PlayStation version of the game for unlocking the other 42 trophies, bringing their total to 43 achievements. The rarest achievement that's shared between all platforms is the Artistic Collection achievement for finding and placing all developer paintings, of which there are a total of 8, one for each member of the original team behind Raft. To make this achievement a little bit easier, dig up either a safe or briefcase using the metal detector, and save your game before picking up the treasure. If you pick it up and it has the painting you wanted, fantastic, move on. If not, exit back to the main menu without saving. Simply reload and try again until you get what you need to finish your collection. Or just keep sailing to new islands and hope you eventually get lucky. Snowmobiles are the only drivable player vehicles within the world of Raft, and they can only be found on the 7th story island inside these half domes around key locations on the island. These vehicles are meant to make traversing Temperance's vast landmass a little less tedious, but there are a few other uses for them. For one, you can use the momentum built up by the snowmobile's speed to clear gaps and make jumps that lead to hidden areas. Or secondly, if you approach a relay tower while on a snowmobile and happen to have a weapon selected in your hotbar, simply looking at the cable box will re-equip your weapon while you're still riding on the snowmobile. And that allows you to engage in some horseback-style combat that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Although the snowmobiles themselves are incapable of causing damage to polar bears, jousting one while on a snowmobile is effective. Be careful using arrows though, as arrows will often get stuck in the hitbox of the snowmobile, and attempting to collect them will take you off of the snowmobile, necessitating you to find another tower and repeat the glitch. Sadly, there is no way to bring snowmobiles off of Temperance, because although you can get them onto your raft, they will slide off once your raft starts moving, or despawn once the island does. So enjoy them while you explore and pull off the ultimate polar bear battle. There are several hidden bonus areas throughout Raft's story islands that hide unique resources and collectibles that will help you along your journey. The first is this large pit found off of the right of the backside of the second story location. By swimming far enough down this hole, you can find a metal loot box with high-value resources. On the fourth story island, you can find an extra safe by swimming down to the final shipping container and continuing around the side near the front. The golf ball hides many secrets around ledges and various rooftops, but the two primary secret areas are the cubby found in the container maze that you can get to by making a path from the front to the small hole in the side underneath the crane controls. And the second one can only be accessed by pressing this small button in the top left of the elevator you access after repairing all of the electrical boxes in the plantation. This elevator will take you down to level -20, where you can unlock the relevant achievement and pick up the one-of-a-kind elevator music cassette. Around Varuna Point, there are plenty of hidden air pockets in the ceilings of the submerged sections that hide valuable extra loot, as well as plenty of extra loot boxes hidden behind corners and in dumpsters. On Temperance, make sure to visit all of those irradiated bunkers after fixing the main reactor for plentiful extra supplies. And finally, be sure to visit this hidden cavern with 2 loot boxes on the Mountain Large Island variant. While Maya and Rohi have been the long-standing protagonists of Raft, Chapter 3 introduced 4 more player models that you can unlock as you progress through the game. Note that none of these player models have any buffs or advantages, they are simply cosmetic, and once you unlock a character once, they will stay unlocked forever. The first character is Tala, found at the top of the first story location. Johnny, the second character, is found in the mountain relay tower on the third story island. The third character, Elaine, is found in the bridge after launching it from the 5th story location, and finally, the 4th character is Shogo, and he can be found in the cryo chambers next to the reactor on the 7th story island. Shogo also has my favorite introduction of any of these characters, simply because I love his graceful entrance back into the world. Again, these characters have no functional differences, but all of them have 6 different outfit options that you can access via the main menu, or via a wardrobe purchased from one of the trading posts found on large islands. Changing your character model will also change the Polaroid and description found at the very front of your story journal, but no NPCs have different interactions with any of the other forward scouts, so simply play as who you like to play as. Or always play as Lumberjack Rohi. After you unlock the metal detector via a blueprint found on the 4th story island, you can construct one to find various buried treasures throughout the Raft world. Small islands will always have just 1 treasure spot, and large islands will always have 3. Story islands will have a set number of treasure spots depending on the location, with the most being on Balboa with 6 treasure spots. Notably, despite it being the largest landmass, there are no treasure spots on Temperance. Once you've found a treasure spot, digging it up will reveal one of 4 treasure varieties. The first and most common is the junk pile that spawns 42% of the time, containing a worse version of an island crate loot table. The second most common is the briefcases, which has a similar loot table to the island crate, with the addition of copper and the rare developer paintings. The third loot table is the safe, which has by far the most valuable loot with 3 guaranteed pieces of titanium. The safe also has a higher chance to drop developer paintings, and also the additional collectibles of the toy robots and cassette tapes. And finally, the 4th treasure type is the tiki piece. There are 4 unique kinds of pieces that need to be uncovered and stacked in a particular order to unlock the Former Glory achievement and the rare tiki mask. The most effective way to gather lots of treasure is by traveling in the direction of the wind and doing drive-by treasure hunting. On small islands especially, it's easy to swim to the island, dig up your treasure, and swim back to your raft before it gets too far. This gives you the shortest amount of time spent per treasure, so you can maximize your RNG towards getting those rare collectibles. If you want to get the Instrumentalist achievement to finish out your raft completion run, then you'll need to get your hands on some of the instruments. Weirdly, although there are 4 playable instruments in the game, only playing the baby grand piano, unlocked at a vending machine on the 5th story island, will grant you the achievement. This piano is mostly playable, as sadly there is no way to access the half steps or the black keys, so you're stuck in C major or A minor. You can still use it to play fun songs though. The other 3 varieties of instruments can be purchased at the trading posts found on large islands. The air horn is a tier 1 item, and unsurprisingly, sounds like an air horn. There's the honk horn, which is available as a tier 2 trade, and this one sounds like your classic clown horn. And finally, there is the Viking horn that you can purchase as a tier 3 trade, and blowing it makes this sound. For the most part, these smaller instruments are mostly just decorative, but they can be placed on shelves, tables, the floor, or hung from the wall. Just remember to buy a piano from your local vending machine to get the achievement, and continue on with the rest of your journey. Second to having an interesting shape for your raft design, adding a coat of paint can really help you take things to the next level. Raft painting is done via a color wheel with 38 unique options, all of which come from the combination of the 5 varieties of colored flowers that you can grow on your raft. Placing these flowers into a paint mill will create the paint item. Blue, red, and yellow flowers will give 18 paint per flower milled, whereas black and white flowers will both give 24 paint per flower. Most surfaces and raft equipment can be painted in some capacity, and you have the option of using a single solid color or using a secondary color that comes with additional design choices. Below the color wheel, there are also 6 available patterns that will automatically apply to your surface. Painting most objects with dual colors will apply solid colors to certain areas, but the patterns will always be applied to walls or floors. These patterns can be visually busy, but sometimes inverting your colors will soften the effect. You also have the option to paint a single side of a wall or both sides. This also works with pillars, although which side is painted depends on the rotation of the pillar and not the direction you are facing. But in a mostly blue void, having a few pops of color goes a long way. As much as I adore our favorite ocean floating simulator, it isn't necessarily the most optimized game on the market. If you have a lower-end PC, or are struggling to get frames or anything like that, here are a few settings and tricks to help minimize your resource consumption. Number 1, turn on motion sickness mode in your settings. This minimizes the wave action in the game, which does make things a little bit less pretty, but it consumes significantly less of your CPU. By the way, on PC, you can check your current system usage by pressing O. Repeated presses will show you different information about the game. Turning on motion sickness also means that items will no longer bob in stormy weather, and you are significantly less likely to flood your bottom floor. Animals on your raft will quickly drop your frame rate, so no matter how cute they are, try to limit the number you're bringing around with you. And of course, the bigger your raft is, the more of your computer it's taking up. If you plan on building a massive platform, note that things will get exponentially laggier the bigger you go. So if you're really struggling to get the game running smoothly, small, compact builds with minimal critters and a calm sea is the way to go. While most objects in Raft can only be placed a certain way, there are many items you're likely missing out on their full potential because you've only ever put them on the floor. For instance, the simple small crop plot can not only be placed on floors, shelves, or tables, but it can be hung from the wall and even hung from the ceiling. Weirdly, the advanced small crop plot can be hung from the wall, but not from the ceiling. The simple grill can also be hung from a wall to conserve some floor space. One of my favorite examples of practical alternative placement is the large wooden table under the decoration tab. This table can be hung from the wall like an extra large shelf, making it the perfect place to arrange your storage system. In the proper application, it can also be hung directly over collection nets to turn them back into functional floor space while keeping the utility of the nets below. Directional placement is also useful for multiple decoration items, like all of the plants in vases and pots that you can craft. Much like the simple small crop plot, these can be placed on floors, shelves, and tables, but can similarly be hung from the wall or even from the ceiling. Don't miss out on opportunities to design and organize your space by plopping everything on the floor. A little dimension goes a long way. There are 2 kinds of shelves available in Raft, both of which are found in the decoration packages that start spawning once you've played a given save file for at least 30 minutes. The simple shelf is great for hanging on a wall or placing it on the floor to fill with decorations, but the second wooden shelf is great for so much more. This shelf can be rotated on walls, meaning that you can change its orientation to face any direction. And from there, any object that you place on a shelf will be similarly rotated. This is one of the simplest and most effective steps towards aesthetic raft designs, like how I rotated a shelf with cabinets to form the bowsprit on my galleon design. The same idea can be applied to orienting the long cabinets vertically for a thicker pillar. Or you can use this knowledge for just straight up funny interactions, like placing a locker with a seat on top of it below the waterline. Shelves can also be rotated with each other. So by using a trick I learned from Salty, if you place a shelf on a pillar or a wall at a 90-degree angle, you can place another shelf onto that shelf to create a small box on the floor. Fill that box with whatever you want to emulate a small crate of materials, or cap it off with detail planks for even more options. If you intend on keeping some furry or feathered friends on your raft, you're likely going to want some grass to keep them happy and healthy. Grass plots are unlocked via the research table after acquiring dirt using a shovel on large islands. While grass plots are great for keeping your animals fed, they also have another, more useful hidden advantage that makes them one of the most powerful items in the game. Namely that they ignore the laws of physics, and any object colliding with the hitbox of a grass plot no longer has collision with any other item. This can be used to stack nearly infinite items in a single tile, like 20 tree plots, a few chests, or more plants that you can find anywhere else in the sunken world. Although the grass plot is normally locked into the building grid, it can be placed on top of pillars, which will offset the grid by a half tile in either direction. Placing it on a pillar also slightly lowers the hitbox of the grass plot, which in turn allows it to clip items through any surface both above or below the grass. With a little creativity, you can really push the limits of raft building using nothing more than a few pillars and a few blades of grass. So maybe touching grass is useful after all. Raft has a decently limited building system with only a few available sets of tiles, but you can abuse those tiles to achieve some wonderful designs. First, floating floors are a must-know building glitch. Instead of having horizontal pillars every other tile, or cluttering your floor with the vertical ones, simply build up to your desired height with cheap wooden windows, and build out your floor using the triangle pieces instead of the square pieces. After triangles are placed, they no longer require support, so you can remove the windows and get your full materials back, and you don't have to have all of that extra clutter from pillars. Secondly, raised platforms can be placed on top of pillars, and this shifts their building grid by a half tile in either direction for a double axis offset. You can use this to create more dimension in compact builds where a full tile looks a bit too clunky. It's especially powerful when combined with the aforementioned floating floors. Be warned that all pieces placed in the offset will still have normal collision, so you may need to be a little bit creative with filling in some of the gaps. Kind of like the way you can combine two rounded shapes like this, because diagonal walls and straight roofs don't have collision with each other. Sometimes limits create ingenuity, and ingenuity can create beautiful things. Detail planks are probably the best known glitchy item in the rafting world, and for good reason. You can unlock detail planks via a blueprint as a tier 3 trade from the trading posts found on large islands, and then you can craft them at a 2-to-1 ratio of normal wooden planks. Detail planks are best known for their game-breaking ability, including but not limited to the ability to build underwater, and the detail plank is the only item in the game that can do this without the use of other exploits. Standing on submerged detail planks won't trigger any swimming animations, and as such, it won't trigger aggro from Jeremiah, nor will it trigger the oxygen meter. Additionally, like all extendable building pieces, detail planks can glide through story locations and islands without collision. While the detail plank has plenty of notable glitchy uses, it is also extraordinarily useful for vanilla automation, like this automatic egg collector designed by Salty, which utilizes the slight angle of the planks, along with the weird egg physics from cluckers, to ensure that you stop losing your biofuel resources in the glass. After you place one end of a detail plank, you can also control its placement more easily by holding R and moving your mouse to rotate it, and by using your scroll wheel to change its angle. While they can be frustrating to use for decoration, just remember, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. The same thing applies to detail plank designs. While detail planks are the best known glitchy item, I personally believe that carpets are an even more powerful tool. All varieties of carpets are unlocked via the decoration packages that start spawning once 30 minutes has passed in a given save file, and they all cost some variant of ropes and leaves to craft. Rugs can be painted with any number of designs and colors, and combined in unique ways to elevate your raft design. But where carpets really shine is when you place them on top of a shelf. A carpet placed on top of a shelf can be taken off of the wall, but will still be floating because of the way that Raft calculates support. Combine that with the fact that most objects in the game can be placed on top of shelves, and the shelves themselves can be rotated on walls, and then you've got plenty of opportunities for funny and creative designs. Additionally, carpets have the small bonus of being able to ignore the laws of physics when it comes to collision, as a carpet placed on top of a floor or a shelf will allow other items to clip through pieces as well. It can even clip multiple times, like the way I nestled my engine into a space it definitely shouldn't have fitted in my updated lighthouse design. Just imagine being able to place your anchor or your purifier through a solid floor. That's only possible because carpets are the true unsung heroes of raft glitches. Ziplines are a raft building tool unlocked via collecting all 3 zipline parts found around the 4th story island. You can also place down zipline anchors on your raft, which will allow you to ride the line from place to place so long as you have a zipline tool equipped. However, ziplines are also one of the 2 mechanisms for teleportation in Raft. By placing a pair of zipline anchors directly vertical to each other, if you interact with the rope, you will be teleported upwards. Note that the higher anchor does need to be quite far in the air to get any substantial distance, but the teleport is instantaneous, and you can build a platform right beneath where you teleport to create an instant elevator.
Combine that with a little creativity, and you can have the ultimate raft airship. Aesthetically, ziplines also make for fantastic rigging on more traditional ship designs, and by spamming a lot of them onto some masts, you can make some pretty convincing pirate ships. When placing a zipline, you can also use your scroll wheel to change the amount of slack in the line, which doesn't affect how far it will teleport you or the speed at which you travel, but it can create some visual interest if you do end up placing a lot of them. There are plenty of people who struggle with first-person games due to nausea, and that can be amplified by Raft's already motion sickness-inducing sway, but playing in third person also has hidden advantages for exploiting and speedrunning the game. For one, the player's reach distance is actually about 33% longer in third person when compared to first person, so you can hit things or interact with things from further away. You can make this even more significant by holding Alt and then using your scroll wheel to change your camera distance, extending your reach even further. Because Raft's interaction is calculated at the camera point and not at the actual player position, this allows several of the most iconic speedrun skips that involve clipping into areas you technically shouldn't be able to reach. My favorite example of this is door clipping up through the second story island. Theoretically, all doors on the ship are locked from the inside, meaning that you can't open them from the outside, but by extending your camera up to the floor above you, you are technically inside the ship and can open it anyways. This same logic applies to many other skips in the game, like opening the main tower door in the golf ball, and even the key to the reactor on Temperance. Aside from its cheesy usefulness, third person is an excellent option for those who want a better perspective while playing our favorite ocean floating simulator. Let's be real, sometimes collecting resources in Raft is a grind, and you just want to have enough planks to make your world-breaking visions come to reality. Enter the humble dupe glitch, and it is ridiculously simple to pull off. Place whatever items you want to duplicate into a storage of any kind and save the game via the pause menu. Then take the items back out of the storage. From there, just exit back to the main menu, making sure that you save the world again. To duplicate your items, go to load your save, but don't just click the big load world button. Instead, go to the world backups button a little bit to the right, and instead load the save that's second from the top. That's the first save that you made when the items were in the chest. Upon loading that save, you'll notice that the items you saved are indeed in your chest, but also in your inventory, effectively duplicating everything you transferred. This can be scaled up to as many things as you can fit in your inventory, which is a lot with the big backpack, and it works because the character save states and the world save states are different in Raft. So may as well get the best bang for your buck and save the world a few times over in a different way, if you know what I mean. While planks, leaves, and plastic may be abundant in the Raft world, there are plenty of items that are significantly more scarce. Namely items that are tied to certain rare achievements, such as the developer paintings or tiki heads. There are also the two rare hat variants of the captain's hat and the pilot's helmet that can only be found on two specific rare island variants, but I covered those in more detail in tip number 13. Treasure hunting is by far the best method for obtaining rare items, as briefcases have a chance to drop developer paintings, and safes has a chance to drop both paintings and cassette tapes. Certain rare instances of rare items, like the elevator cassette, are guaranteed spawns in set locations, but you'll need to find some secret areas to access them. But the rarest item in all of Raft is the golden toy robot, whose eyes glow an ominous red when the lights are off. This robot is a variant of the green toy robot that you can only obtain by digging up safes while treasure hunting. The normal robot will only drop 2.3% of the time, and the golden robot will only drop 5.2% of the time that you're going to get a robot. Which is why I am glad that there isn't an achievement for this little guy. While there are many fun small details you can find throughout the Raft world, there are also a few major Easter eggs that you won't want to miss on your next playthrough. There's the classic Scrap Duck fishing treasure, which is a reference to Scrap Mechanic, a game developed by the studio that published Raft, that you can fish up about 2% of the time when you cast your rod. Next is the secret radio messages that you may hear in between tunes on the radio. As the creepy voice reads out letters in the NATO phonetic alphabet, if you write down the messages, you'll either hear "All your rafts are belong to us," which is a reference to the 80s arcade game Zero Wing, and its iconic "All your base are belong to us" line. Or you'll hear "The goat is a lie," which is obviously a reference to the first Portal game. One of Raft's most obscure Easter eggs is a tiny hidden game clam in a small cave below the reactor on Temperance. This is a reference to a livestream done by Wayne Radio TV announcing the fictional console, denim lining and all. Of course, a small doll that falls out of the rocket you launch on the fourth story island is named Major Tom after 2001's A Space Odyssey. But my personal favorite Easter egg is that when you swap to a banana as your held object in your hand, there is a small chance that it will trigger a shootout animation because that's something we all did as kids. Like any sandbox survival game, modding your next playthrough is a great way to refresh the game and experience new joys and challenges in our favorite ocean floating simulator. Some of my favorite mods allow for expanded building utilities, customizing certain world interactions, changing the spawn rates of Flotsam, or just adding new content that isn't in the vanilla game. Even better, Raft is insanely easy to mod on PC thanks to the help of the Raft modding website, which is basically like Modrinth or CurseForge for Raft. All you do is click the green button to download the mod loader, install it on your system, and then find a mod you'd like to try. Just click the little green Install Mod button, and that's it. It will be added to your next Raft instance, and all you have to do is launch the game from the mod loader. The loader can even tell you if you're on the main branch of the game or on the beta branch, and it will automatically swap between the two for you. As for the mods themselves, most of them work in multiplayer, and I personally have never encountered issues with file corruptions or save losses. Just double check the mod descriptions to make sure that they are what you're looking for and fit your specific use case. And then you have an infinite number of ways to experience our favorite ocean floating simulator. The radio tower is the first of Raft's 8 story locations. This is by far the smallest location, and as the structure is entirely man-made, it's missing a lot of the opportunities for exploration and looting that are true of the other story locations. That being said, there are a total of 5 story notes hidden around the island, including the code towards the next island. The easiest of these notes to miss is disguised as a corkboard in the break room, so make sure that you don't miss it when you go to pick up the blueprint for the headlight. The only other blueprint on this location is for the recycler, and that's found attached to the whiteboard next to the code. The biggest feature of the radio tower is its 5 wooden loot boxes, which are one of the best mid-game loot tables, and being able to pick up 5 of them in such close proximity makes revisiting the radio tower worth it whenever you sail past it. There are 2 wooden crates in the submerged portion, one under the stairs to the next level, one hidden in a room on its own portion of the second floor, and finally, one at the very top. So as you go, pick up some extra loot, say hi to Tala, and move along to the next destination. This massive yacht reached its final resting place when Olaf Wilkstrom made some interesting leadership decisions, leading to an infestation of lurkers calling this dark, musty ship their home. The lurkers themselves respawn relatively quickly, so if you aren't in desperate need of their meat, it may be better to allow them to despawn naturally to give you another 5 minutes before they can come back with a vengeance. To make it less dark if you aren't a fan of the headlights, you can simply disable shadows in the graphics portion of your pause menu, and that lights up the place pretty nicely. As you're running around, there are several nooks and crannies to explore with plenty of extra loot, including a total of 3 metal loot boxes, which have the best loot table for any island crate. The first of these boxes is hidden behind the door you need the car jack for, but the other 2 require a bit more creativity. One is on the very top of the ship, which you can either get to by jumping off of a friend's head in multiplayer, or by locking your FPS to 30 in single player. For some reason, you cannot make that jump at higher FPS. And the last metal loot box is found off of the back right of the ship down this small hole, where if you swim down far enough, you'll spot it glimmering in the distance. And then, unlike this boat, you can sail off into the distance. My personal favorite of Raft's story islands, Balboa is a large former mountaintop inhabited by bears, bees, and some creepy makeshift children. This is the epicenter of the game's evergreen biome, which is denoted by its temperate climate, as well as choppable birch and pine trees that you can find on various evergreen islands. These trees are the best source of wood per tree in the game. As you progress through the story, take a bit of extra time to explore the relay stations, and you'll be rewarded with plentiful extra loot that's just outside of your normal view. Balboa is also a great spot for treasure hunting, because compared to the normal 3 treasure spots on other large or story islands, Balboa can have a maximum of double that at 6 treasure spots. Most of the challenge for this island is navigating your way through a large, mostly unmarked landmass while avoiding the pesky bears, and the only puzzle is the method for lowering this bridge. You're supposed to use the numerous rocks scattered around the base, but any in-game projectile works, including but not limited to your hook, arrows, or even the net launcher to lower the drawbridge. And if you don't want to deal with the poison pit with a bear chasing you, simply go around it by Skyrim horsing the mountain around the left side of the fence, which is both faster and easier in my opinion. Caravan Island represents the center of the desert biome, and this island houses all of the not-so-wonderful things you can expect on most desert islands. There are feral pigs that only drop leather, poison puffers with a penchant for explosives, bees for your honey farm, and the white Screecher boss, which actually has less HP than a normal island Screecher.
Scattered around this island are the many caravans that give Caravan Town its name, and inside those caravans, you will find the highest loot density of any island in the game. Each caravan will contain some combination of tool packages, resource packages, or food packages. There are a total of over 50 of these loot packages around the island, so it is worth your time to go exploring and gathering. For even more loot, the desiccated trees can be chopped for a few planks, and there's a high density of submerged ores around the island. Caravan Town also has 2 guaranteed animal spawns with a 3rd potential spawn, making this a prime island for attempting to find rare animal variants. This island is also the only island that requires an external material of explosive powder to complete normally, but thankfully that is solved by the abundance of the buggers just below the surface. This island is the best place to farm explosive powder so that you can make all of your firework dreams come to reality. Tangaroa, or the golf ball as I like to call it, is Raft's 5th story location, and it is one of the most iconic ones. This location is filled with high-rise apartments that have unique themes and stories, like my favorite being the painter's apartment or the sad birthday party. And it's the only place in the game where you can find bananas and strawberries in the plantation area. Because the seeds only drop 2/3 of the time when harvesting a plant, you will need to return to this location to replenish your stocks if you plan to make a lot of smoothies. For additional plants, all of the 83 decorative trees around the pavilion are also choppable, functional trees that each give 3 planks and 3 leaves when you cut them down, and those will also grow back every time you revisit the island. The only unique enemy on Tangaroa is the butler bots, which sadly don't drop any loot beyond their initial keycard, so it's best to avoid them unless you have a door that needs opening. But possibly the most important aspect of Tangaroa is that many things are not as they seem. Try jumping through windows, onto balconies, and onto roofs to uncover plentiful extra loot that would otherwise go unnoticed. And if all else fails, a big ramp in the sky will always get you there. For a game based entirely on the ocean, it's a bit surprising that there's only one submerged story location, but that comes in the form of Varuna Point, a concept floating city that never made it onto the waves. This treacherous environment is home to several lurkers, a handful of anglerfish, and the dreaded rhino shark boss. This is one of only 2 places that you can find anglers, so pick up a few extra heads to wear as a fancy hat, or to use as an easier source of biofuel. Despite these toothy fish, Jeremiah is likely the most annoying enemy at this particular location. Fortunately, you can make your life a bit easier by parking your raft a slight distance away, then using the ramp found on the side of the taller tower to get onto dry land. If you're on dry land for over 30 seconds, Jeremiah's aggro will reset to being circled around your raft, and you're free to go diving without him trying to munch on you. As you go exploring, note that many of the air pockets hidden in the ceilings of the submerged apartments hold extra loot, including one of the grabber caches needed to grab the Cache Collector achievement. And when you do make it down to the rhino shark fight, make sure to check the inside of the air vents inside of the side pockets, because sometimes you'll find a few healing salves that might make your fight just a little bit easier. Temperance is the center of Raft's polar biome, which is a lot like the evergreen biome found around Balboa, but it features polar bears instead of brown bears and lacks the pretty birch trees. It's also home to snowmobiles, which are great fun for riding around and terrorizing your friends or local wildlife. Temperance is also home to the Selene Research Facility, a nuclear reactor that's currently unstable without your intervention. Fixing the reactor not only allows access to the last room with the last story code and Shogo's cryo chamber, but it also dissipates the radiation in the rest of the sunken bunkers around the island, which are full of valuable loot like titanium ore. Before fixing the reactor, scuttlers will continuously spawn in the core room, meaning that you can technically farm infinite radioactive bug meat to fuel the rest of your travels. The other notable locations on Temperance are the Igloo Town, inside of which you can find healing salve, various resources, and the best item in the game, which is the penguin mug. And underneath the observatory, you will find an ice tunnel with the single best location to farm anglerfish if you still need the Master Angler Hunter achievement. Simply save before you take any of them out, reload your save to do it again, and repeat until you have Raft's rarest achievement on Steam. Utopia is the final story location in Raft, and also one of the most arduous to play through. Notable attractions around Utopia include the water puzzle near Dedo's Tower, the most awful parkour section of the game, and a series of puzzles requiring various weights to raise gears. For the water puzzles, it's easiest to align the circles from the outside first. Just make sure both the inlet and outlet are connected by the outermost ring, move on to the next layer, and repeat. For the awful parkour section, you can actually skip doing the parkour entirely by just running along the net until you reach this crate attached to the pulley system. If you crouch and jump on top of this crate, you can pull the lever and use it as a little elevator. Just make sure to jump off before the crate gets all the way to the top. As for the weight puzzle, you can similarly crouch and ride the puzzle elevator, which is significantly easier than going up and down the ladder each time you need to change the weight. After finishing the story location by either defeating Alpha as intended, or by floating through the skyscraper in a giant bathtub on top of a ramp, you will spawn back on the plaza surrounded by NPCs whom you have rescued from Olaf's wrath. This plaza is filled with various consumable goods, and each time you revisit this island, all of the food baskets will be replenished so that you can fuel whatever objectives you set for yourself next. After you've explored all of Raft's story islands, unlocked every recipe, opened every decoration package, and finished what was intended as the main journey of Raft, you may find yourself craving more of our favorite ocean floating simulator. In my opinion, this is where Raft falls a bit short. In an endlessly playable game, you are always wanting more to do, but like any sandbox game, a lot of the fun is what you make of it. So here are a few of my suggestions for what to do after you've completed Raft's story. Number 1, achievement hunting. This can be grindy, especially if you're playing on Steam with the 104 total achievements, but it is gratifying to build your first tiki pool and see it come to life on its own. Plus, there are a number of fun collectibles like the dev paintings and the cassettes that you can use as motivation to continue your journey. Suggestion number 2 is to beautify your base. If you're a fan of Minecraft mega bases, apply the same theory to Raft. It's a sandbox, and it's meant for you to be creative. I know Raft Building has limits, but limits create ingenuity, and you can create some gorgeous things in this game. Detail planks alone open a whole world of possibilities. And suggestion number 3, attempt to speedrun. There isn't enough competition in the Raft speedrunning scene, and I want someone to take my world records so that I can take them back from you. Please, I'm begging you, speedrun the game. It'll be fun, I promise. If you've made it all the way through Raft, but aren't quite ready to give up our favorite ocean floating simulator yet, you may want to try out the original version of Raft that was popular on the internet in 2016, a full 10 years ago now. This version of Raft is what made the later versions so iconic, and Let's Plays from major YouTubers like Jacksepticeye or FGTV got Raft its head start in the indie game world. Thankfully, version 1.05 is still available on itch.io as it existed back then, before Raft was available in early access on Steam. And this old version is free to download and install, albeit only on PC. This version of Raft is a fight for survival in its truest sense. Jeremiah is a shiny black blob who tries to eat you and your raft. There are no islands to explore or a story to journey through, just hunger and thirst to maintain and a raft to build. Many things you know and love from the current version of the game are still around, just very different, with some things changing entirely. Also be warned that coconuts have physics and will try and roll away from you, which is a bit different from how they are in today's version. Playing through this old version will help you appreciate the newer content and style, so that you can begin your journey as a forward scout all over again with fresh eyes. And those are all 101 of my tips and tricks for navigating Raft. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this massive project of mine, and I hope to see you again soon. Forever and always, happy rafting.